Hello and welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of Grapple, the Grapple Patreon show. I can't remember how to do the intro these days. I'm Benno.
I'm JP.
I'm Gareth.
And I'm Matty.
The official podcast of the podcast. That's what we're going with. And we got a full set here tonight. It's a fit.
The official podcast, Benno. It just should be that.
Grapple, the official podcast. How about that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of flagships out there. We can't be a flagship. The official podcast of wrestling. There we go. We used to be the official podcast of Brit Res, but that was a long time ago. I think that works. But yeah, we got the whole set here as we thought we'd maybe do a bit of a special episode today. As we maybe thought we might maybe make it bleed into the lineup as we go in the coming months and do a bit of a state of wrestling type podcast. Get all the experts in. Get Gareth in to defend his beloved SmackDown. Get Matty in to talk about AEW Dynamite. We've got it's good to have the experts on hand, JP. You know, me and you can sit back while them two argue today. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you said let the retro powers explode, isn't it, really? And,
yeah, I've got a feeling we're going to have some sort of disagreement tonight, Gareth, mate. But it's all in good, what's the word, not fun. It's all in good seriousness. It's all in, like, you know, for the love of the business, isn't it, mate? We'll always be friends, we will.
Always about the business.
Yeah, always.
That's what
you sound like those Mega Slam lads.
That's what we call it, the job. That's why you get onto a loser. But the business, that could be a name for a podcast, Matty. Maybe we could.
We've flirted with that idea a few times, Benno. Graphics have been made in the past. One of the best graphics of all time.
It was unbelievable. But anyhow, we'll bring that back one day. I get enough of you on the main show, Matty. But yeah, might as well throw it. We're going to go straight into the main stuff, but very quickly, just plug wise to throw them in. We did a Grapple Lads recording this week, which was me, Matty, and Gareth in the pub on Wednesday. We missed out on Wing Wednesday in Brewdog. Speaking of punk rock, but we did have a good few beers. I last saw you, as I said, on the weekend show, singing along to Cult of Personality in Teddy's bar in town. So don't even want to know what time you got back. Steph might listen to this, Matty, so I'll keep that brief. We had a cracking night, didn't we, lads? And some great chats that I know from today have actually been used to you, Gareth, that we even talked about. So that tells you. As Andy Ogden knows, the danger of drinking and podcasting, because you do end up in some of those binds.
First thing to go with me is the memory. Like, I might look more sober than I actually am, like in a lot of instances, but yeah, the memory just fucking goes. Like those legit stuff like that we've like talking about there, they're just thinking no memory of that, so gonna have to go back and listen to that podcast and find out what we actually fucking talked about for the last hour or so, because I haven't got much memory of it apart from crossing that road and getting into Dead Crafty. So we'll see. And apologies if anyone's listening today and I regurgitate takes that I had from a week ago because they might be fresh to me, but not to you. But so sorry.
I'm just glad that Gareth doesn't remember Matty, because at least he's one person that doesn't remember me revealing both my internet history, which is
I remember that.
Mate.
and what Benno stood for in my old possible Yahoo rap days, which
one of the best of all time. Benno, honestly, I was absolutely just loving it. It was so good, mate. It was that reveal of that what Benno's done for is just honestly one of the greatest bits of audio of all time. It's honestly, it's so fucking good. But yeah, Trips to America was the one as well. Ben, absolutely, like, just loved hearing your stories about that.
I think we learned stuff about each other this time, Matty. I feel like we all did. We even talked about how we all first met and got a little bit of insight into different versions of stories as we met in different places in our life. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff there, Matty. A lot of anytime we do one of them podcasts, we have a few beers, we get a bit introspective. It's kind of what I do.
It gets a bit deep. It got a bit deep early with a few of my questions as well. So, but that's what we're about. We try and mix it up and talk about life as well as ultimately the business at the end. Do you remember, Gareth, the idea we had? I don't want to give too much away about another show we're going to do down the line.
I remember that. Yeah, 100%. I remember that.
You just kept saying the word Undertaker at me.
Okay, I know what that is, yeah. Okay.
And it's not a show about the Undertaker, so listeners don't get it too deep.
It's about the best wrestlers of all time. That's why it's going to might have a special 5-1 for your patrons.
We might have.
Yes. Coming up next one. Yeah,
we got
all the best ideas.
The debate, it got heated for sure, so it'll be a good
Thinking
show.
That, JP, who is the best wrestler of all time? We're going to come up with stats and we're going to figure it out and do like maybe a
category, JP. Criteria, that's the word, Gareth. Yeah.
I'm absolutely game for this.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it'll be good, JP.
Oh, the Grapple Hall of Fame, mate! I'm fucking loving this. This is awesome for this. We'll get people to vote on it, and then we'll just throw away their votes.
And I think
Donald Trump, as you mentioned earlier in the pre-show.
I think we already ruled out The Undertaker, didn't we, that night? I think when we went through the criteria, I don't think he was even high enough to rank, was he, Matty, for consideration? I think
Lower than Dynamite, mate. 6 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 6 out of 10. Pretty much every
well, we have established, haven't we? Even if he doesn't win, we've established that Steve Gareth is going to be in there no matter what, isn't it? Even if me and you would argue the death is going to be
vote
there.
Here, you know, Sean will be 10 out of 10 in every category, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe it should be star rated, I don't know.
It'll be such a good show, though, lads. Can you imagine the proper debate we'll have, which will be, great. I just can't wait to do that, for sure.
Well, there you go. But yeah, Grapple Lads is up, and yeah, we do we plug a lot of stuff here, but genuinely, we always get you know when you get a lot of feedback that it's a good one, and the patrons seem to love the off the cuff chat, and hopefully we'll have you on the December one, JP. We can wet the baby's head and do that in Birmingham maybe live.
Yes.
In December if we can get you there. It might be an
if we're doing it live, then that'll be somewhat terrifying. People just watching you.
Just in person,
pissed around the table, just doing that. But honestly, every time I listen to it, I just fuck. I wish I was there. It would be. It sounds brilliant. It always does.
Come on a night out with us virtually.
Yeah.
So it's
that's funny because the staff of the ship and Mitre were wishing that we weren't there, as they were sweeping up around us,
putting chairs on tables, literally on our table.
Look, we go Broadway, lads. It's what we do. We run long, which we're going to find out today if we don't move on. But yeah, Grapple Lads is out there, and also JP, Halloween film clubs are going to be this week, and yeah, you were in charge of the poll. So what film are you lads going to be reviewing?
We're going back 1981, and it's an outpost in the Antarctic, and we're shooting at dogs. There's reasons for it, as we're going to see The Thing, which is the winner there. I'll just have a check on my mic there because I may not be coming through correctly, but definitely just to reiterate though, The Thing won.
There we go.
Screams you, Gareth. Screams you. That The Thing, doesn't it?
Do you know what? I haven't watched it since I was 16, I reckon. I was when JP put it on the list, I was excited. There was a reason to watch it again, and then when it won, I was like, oh, brilliant! If one of mine wasn't going to win, that was the one I wanted to win. So I feel like it's been a win-win for me, that one.
On all four as well. So free. So hopefully I'm coming through on the right mic now. Brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
It's on all four. So it's free to watch, certainly for another 28 days. So yeah. That'll be tomorrow night's viewing. Or tomorrow's viewing for that one. Gonna get that done. So yeah, brilliant. Looking forward to that.
There we go. That'll be out this week to celebrate Halloween, the Thing Film Club. So yeah, that'll wrap us up for October. Matty, the end of spooky month, and then into November, where we've got, like I say, great 5-to-1 idea that all the best ideas come up pissed in the pub. That'll be then. We'll have a hamlet back for a show in November. You can probably guess what that's going to be and all kinds, but we'll be previewing that next week when me and you do the spotlight, Matty. But yeah, moving on from there, we should get into everything we're going to be talking about this week. And like I say, thought we'd do a bit of a roundtable, kind of look at the state of where WWE are, AEW are, where the wider wrestling world is at a given time. Do a bit of a bird's eye view conversation. Basically, anything to avoid reviewing Collision, because I think there's only so many media you can take. JP, it still exists, Matty. It's still a show. They do eventually put those cards out. It does. It does still happen. Like Monday Night Raw, you should watch it sometime. Great show. But
look at him, he can't help himself, can he?
Is it bad form to be quite happy the hologram was injured? I was like, oh, thank fuck he's gone for a week. Jeez, I'm sick of him.
Reading his name out was the issue there, but yeah, obviously for science we've done a bit of prep for this, and I know Gareth even watched a bit of SmackDown this weekend, so I'm looking forward to that conversation when it gets into WWE. You told us in the pub, Gareth, I don't know if you remember saying this, that you are now a weekly Raw reviewer, because as a great podcaster and as a great man on the internet, we've got to be right, haven't we, at the end of the day? And to be right, we've got to be informed, and I respect that about you, that you will watch something that you really just don't like, just so that when you say it's shit, you can go, well, here's the evidence, and you can back it up, which was kind of the take as to why you were watching Rampage and Collision so long towards the end of last year. But yeah, you've done your homework here this week, Gareth.
I have fucking done the Lord's work, tuning in to watch 2 hours of WWE SmackDown. Like, God, that's taking that one firmly on the
Lucky
chin.
Man, Gareth.
What an experience that was. I tell you what, having heard the enthusiasm that Benno and JP had for Dynamite on Friday night on the weekend show, I was thinking, well, I can't wait to fucking watch that. So that left me totally uninspired to watch Dynamite, and I thought maybe I'll cleanse my palate with a bit of SmackDown. You know, going on Twitter. Just seems to be positivity everywhere, no matter everywhere I turn. It just seems everyone talking about how great WWE is, how great SmackDown is, how great Raw is, how great everything is. So yeah, I had to tune in and find out for myself.
Well, I heard, Gareth, that you finished SmackDown, and as soon as you press stop on it, you're right on Ticketmaster, and you dropped $2,000 on some WrestleMania tickets for April. Oh wait, no, that's Matty. Do we have a number, Matty? Do we have an exact number on it? You know
what? You know me. I'm what's it? Transparent as they come, Benno. I'll tell you anything that you want to know. I think the official total was each. So this is each for me and my wife. 1,083 English pounds each we dropped for WrestleMania. And you know what else?
Both nights?
Oh, both nights, JP, come on. Okay. Yeah, of course.
All right.
Altogether, though, not like 1,000 per night, just to be clear.
Oh, yeah. So 1,000 for the two shows. And we're in the lower tier as well. So we've absolutely, I think, and to be fair, boys, I would have doubled it. I heard just talking on the weekend show about, like, you know, how it can be, but I've always wanted to go. The investment's there. I would have paid double that just to go, you know, at this point in time. So especially while the product is, like, you might agree, Gareth,
mate, it was 20 quid. It was great.
But was it a hot product? It was shit then, don't want it then. It was shit for 20 years then, wasn't it? We're in a boom period now, so, you know, it's good to go at this time.
Good way to start. Okay.
We are in one.
In fairness, mate, I spent roughly the same on carpets and having them fitted, and I'm not sure I'm going to get anywhere near the amount of joy that you're going to get from WrestleMania for that. I resented every penny of that being spent. It's a nice carpet, but I'm not going to lie down on it on a fucking Friday night going, oh, this is awesome.
You're gonna get like years out of that. Whereas I think same thing though, Matty. You're gonna get years out of the stories of going to WrestleMania. I don't know whether Steph would. Just to clarify it, so it's 1,000. For two people for 2 nights, or it's 1,000 each for 2 people for 2 nights? No, Benno,
it's 1,000 each, mate. So we
paid, needs to make that clear. Sorry,
yeah, okay. Over £2,000 for a couple to go to WrestleMania. Yes.
So with that number out there, Matty, your overall assessment of where WWE is right now, you know, like, and it kind of jumping ahead to kind of the second question here, but we're kind of formatless here. We can do it. Like, you know, they're in a hot streak. They're probably going to sell that Mania out. They're probably going to, you know, below every possible record. If those numbers stay anything like that, and as you've said, like the seats behind you are now more expensive than what you paid for what you got. And obviously it'll come down. I know people like Martin are waiting until close to the time, and you know things will change. And yeah, some of the floor seats are like, I think I heard Brandon Thurston say today, like 15 grand, which is like, you know, I was gonna say a car, but like 15 a mile car, probably more of them, to be honest. Like you could buy every car I've ever owned to be like 5 times over with that amount of money. But it speaks to something, doesn't it, Matty? That like, and that's obviously all joking aside, why you're invaluable to this podcast to give us that, you know, WWE fan side of things. Like, are we in the middle of like, is this an Attitude Era? Is this a Hogan Era? I heard a bit of back and forth on the Discord today about that with Ewan and Andy Ogden christened it like the Attitude Era would work great. Ewan was describing it more as maybe a bit more Hogan Era with, you know, big characters and story, but in certain places, maybe not necessarily everywhere. Is it comparable to those eras for you? Is that a ridiculous statement? Because I know it will be for a lot of the AEW adjacent people we've got listening to this.
I think it's going to be a mix of the two when it goes Netflix. I think it might be more Attitude Era when it goes on Netflix. I do like the Hogan Era comparison because it's that. And I know I've heard, like, I always use Crewy as my main guys in AEW guys. So say Jey Uso, for example, he can't take him serious because he is too like cartoony. Do you know what I mean? So I can see how these characters are larger than life now, like a Rhea Ripley. They jump off the screen like they used to in the Hogan Era, I'd say. But I think when it does go on Netflix, I think that's when you'll. And I know there's been a bit of, you know, like swear words and a bit of blood crept in, but I think that'll get ramped up a bit more when it does go to Netflix. So I think them two comparisons are kind of meeting in the middle in a way, Ben. But it's just like we'll see. We've said it how many times, and you guys have said it. It is just there's loads of wrestlers over the scene and in the Discord where people are saying like the actual Judgment Day story mightn't be over per se, but the main characters in it when they come out are so over that it's beyond belief. It's a weird like scenario at the same time.
What you put that down to is that just like obviously me and you.
I think it's cool. I think it's cool again, Benno. I think that's a thing. I think we have our things about Roman Reigns for years where he wasn't cool. I think it's all the TikTok as well. It's all that Instagram where I'm not really fond of it when I do click on it because like it's your algorithms. We joke about all that, but it's life, isn't it? You click on there. I've had people in work who are non-wrestling fans know who Rhea Ripley is, know who Roman Reigns is because they're scrolling through and they see all these. It's just crossed over again, and these are cool characters. Dominic Mysterio, and you've said it for years. He's a current like person, isn't he, Ben? He'll dress like you see a guy his age would. It's just all a bit current. It's all fresh. It's all cool for me. I think that's a big part of it as well.
I would push back on whether it's crossed over. I'm not sure it has. I think the people who
Do you not think?
No, I think the people who were people who were gonna like it just like it more for me. And I think WWE is like we joke about it. I was going to say we argue back and forth over years of was it bad for 20 years. I would say yes, you would say no, but I would say being a WWE fan during those periods, and I would have classed myself as one maybe in the early 2010s at a push, was a punishment exercise. You weren't rewarded for investing in what they were doing. Stop me if that's
that as well. Yeah,
company.
Of course.
That a lot of that was happening over those years. And for me, I think the difference is that those fans are now rewarded for paying attention. You said about Judgment Day, you're rewarded for investing in a Rhea Ripley. You're rewarded for, you're going to see Dominic Mysterio get his comeuppance. Yes, I was going to say before, me and you argued about Cody Rhodes and whether it should have been done last year or not. But, all the politics that went into it happening this year. But once it did happen, those fans who were invested finally got that reward and got that happy moment. And I always feel like when I put Raw and SmackDown on, I talked about Dynamite being like a brown colour, Raw and SmackDown. I'm sure Gareth's going to talk about it's like a sky blue or a purple or a green or a really bright Disney colour, whatever you want to call it. But while it might not be always to my tastes, what I can say watching that is the people who are into that colour and into that flavour are watching it and getting rewarded and getting those moments and getting those happy moments and getting those happy endings and getting the payoffs to these stories. Like those things aren't in doubt anymore. So, and that's a roundabout way of me going back around to saying I think that's it. That's exactly what it is. It's just as simple as the fans that already existed and the fans that are always the type that would gravitate towards this WWE product are being super served. I don't know if it's necessarily crossing over to a more mainstream, side of things.
I'd say it is, Benno.
Netflix, though, I think that you'll get more of that. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure that's in the numbers.
It's even, it's even stuff. I'll defend Cody as well when I need to. I will defend him. It's like
you're not going to about 10 minutes, but go on.
No. Well, what when it comes to the actual on screen, but in real life, what he does, which bleeds into the promo we had with Gunther. Like when say like a John Cena come over or whoever, they'd always just be on say Sky Sports News or I know now with the YouTube's massive, you get them on like Hot Ones, First We Feast and all that. But I've never seen no one put the work in when Cody come over on News Round, going to visit Man City, on Blue Peter. You didn't get a Cena doing that. So I think it's crossed over because they're on more things. They're wanted more as well. I think it's that. I don't think it's they're selling themselves to that. I think the ask is there for these wrestlers to come on and stuff like that at the same time. So I do think they have crossed over a bit more than people are giving them credit for as well. I will say that.
I think with stuff like that, it's maybe just, for me, it just feels like it's the people who are doing that side of things, the marketing, the PR and things seem to be a bit more open, I think, to getting people involved in other areas. And I think it's probably a little bit more of that different approach that's gone along with it, where there probably has been like not a closed shop in the minds of people running things, but certain like a set approach. And I get the feeling that with the people running things now, there does seem to be this openness to just try and utilize other media and try and do things in a different way and try and get the wrestlers in front of people in a different way. The amount of like different commercial tie-ins and things like that they do these days, which are definitely beneficial. And as part of that, it means getting the wrestlers in front of different audiences, seeing wrestlers tied in with different brands and things like that they've previously not been been effective as. So I think it kind of probably goes a little bit hand in hand there, that like if you push people to be available to do those kind of deals and be available for those kind of outlets, then it becomes a bit perpetual, doesn't it? They're going to come back to you. They go, oh yeah, him again, or somebody else from your company again, and things. So I just think I feel like they've sort of like smartened up. You know, like one of the things that we'd always talk about is like wrestling been 10 years behind what's going on in reality and what's going on in modern culture, and things like that. Definitely. And that goes right back to just things like, you know, when they were first getting Logan Paul involved and when they're getting Prime involved and things like that. Those are things that
sexy,
like
red.
yeah. The time's gone by on
jelly roll,
like some of them things. But they're tapping in so much sooner to things like that, and just trying to be a bit more current. And again, if you do that, then naturally you're kind of like going to benefit, because you're getting in front of these younger people, you're getting in front of these people who are seeing it as being a bit more current, because it's aligned to people that they're seeing on TikTok or they're seeing on digital media that they're following and things like that. So it's just smart. I think WWE have been very, very smart from a PR and marketing standpoint over the last couple of years, more so than they've ever been.
That's TK. I'd say JP, a lot of it.
Yeah, it is. It's just like the machine's working. It was used to be described as the WWE machine, and the problem is there was a fucking loon at the top of it who would just press self-destruct on it. So therefore, it was that you mentioned earlier about the fan service stuff. They've realised that they do have to deliver, and they might deliver delays and things like that to certain stories and the way that they could end up. But they're actually just doing the basics incredibly well. This goes into almost like the first question we've got down on here, and I think it's a game of niches. So it's almost like other media organisations have realised that in order to try and pick up a few people, they have to embrace wrestling, and wrestling now is a lot less hostile than it used to be, just in terms of the wrestlers themselves. Like there isn't the kind of pig-headed attitude that you would have seen from a lot of wrestlers for a very long time. They're a lot more media savvy. It's functioning like very, very well as a company, and it's rather than like it being more adult, because that isn't the case. It's just less stupid. And I think those are the types of things, like if you think of some of the just sort of nonsense supernatural fucking stories and stuff, it feels like there's a lessening of large swathes of that kind of stuff that would have turned away certain kind of audiences. It just feels like they're doing things, like you said, Gareth. I
think they're smarter about doing it.
It's been smart.
The Wyatt family's still all over Raw, aren't they? Like they're still a part of it, but they're kind of kept in.
But even they're more real, Ben. Like it's like the Viking Raiders, for example. When they first come in, they were literal they're still the gimmick, but the real people doing it. If that makes sense. But I agree with JP. It's less stupid, even though some of the characters might seem on face value, but when you watch them, they're not leaning into it as much as they were.
I'll agree with
that.
Yeah, in that way.
While the Wyatt Six will never...
because Johnny Hungy's gay, but we'll get into him later on.
It's hard to make time.
Reflexive. Because all we do is talk positive about AEW on this podcast. Like, you're not listening to the weekend show Thursday.
Even the Wyatt Six is an example of, like, we understand that that's like a group that's come about because of the real life death.
And you watch the videos,
one of the other wrestlers. Yeah. That there's this other kind of, like, it feels much more like in tribute, and so they've kind of like acknowledged that, and it's not gone down.
I think the super fairs serving a general, like, there's a subset of the fan who wants that, and they're somehow managing to let them have the cake and eat it too, and also, not have it take over the show. There's
not dominate,
balance
to
it, isn't there? I would say there, yeah. It's mad because we've kind of jumped ahead to the second point we were going to talk about, which is like, can this hot streak continue? And like you were saying there, Matty, about like how it's right now you see it breaking through to the mainstream. There are indications, I've provided you some numbers there. I'm sure Mattynomics, your hat is on. Things are still, this year you look at like Brandon Thurston did WrestleNomics this week, and he's got like market to market comparisons of AEW and then market to market comparisons to WWE, and pretty much in every town for comparable shows, AEW is down, and that's been the case pretty much since the pandemic, and obviously it's getting worse and worse. And in WWE, over the year, it is overwhelmingly like a gigantic, like, positive difference as far as what they're doing broadly speaking, week to week in places, ratings are broadly speaking up. But there is a bit of a softening happening towards the end of this year. I know Brandon talked about the fact that maybe we're, to my point about whether they can crack further mainstream or not, they're maybe plateauing a little bit, and maybe just plateau, and only because they were so successful last year. So like there comes a point where it's like, how long can that go on? How long can that snowball kind of get bigger? So there are some signs that maybe towards the end of this year we're maybe chilling a little bit on the extended growth, while every metric continues to be positive, like the NXT numbers. The last few weeks or so, you look at Raw and SmackDown have generally been still good, but not necessarily blowing records out. Could be a sign of softening there, maybe not. There's not a huge amount of data there to say it's absolute, but definitely an indication of it.
No, even when you've been looking at WrestleTix and stuff, and I have seen it and I've kept quiet a little bit, I agree in a way that like some of these shows aren't selling out, and they're like 1,000 under what they done like last time they were in that building. So there is that. But I always think this time of the year anyway, before you get to like your Royal Rumble season, I think it always dies down a little bit anyway. Yeah, I think that's the season where I think that's why, once again, without flip-flopping, but this is the show to do that, I suppose, is like, I think that's why Triple H is using this bloodline stuff now, the big stuff, to kind of like keep this audience invested in that at this point, because he could have been people, and I've seen a lot of people say like he's too slow, Triple H, with the thing, but this is actually one of the stories that he hasn't been too slow on. If anything, he's gone a little bit too quick on this. It's still good, don't get me wrong, definitely. But if anything, you could have dragged out. You could have, because there's 6 more weeks till Survivor Series, isn't there, or 5 more weeks till then. So you easily could have. Yeah. So maybe he's thinking that at the same time.
Yeah, 6 months stuck in the mud. It felt like, well, it wasn't that long, but you know what I mean, with no movement, and then all of a sudden Jay and Jimmy are hugging in the ring. Like, it was just like I feel like that needed more weeks. I don't know whether there's a business reason for that, but yeah, maybe there's something to it, as you say there.
Normally the slump would always happen like immediately post Mania, and it felt like there was like a sort of calamitous drop off, and you were just spinning their heels, and they were quite canny in. They've managed to do it with, and we have our reservations about it, Benno, but going to 5-match pay-per-views, so you're not burning out storylines straight away. You're not in a repetitive grind of trying to fill entire cards with like, constant set of changing feuds or just repetition of feuds. A lot of the times they can let stuff kind of like slide and realize out of those 5 matches that it's 2 of them that are going to be significant. And by going abroad, I think that's the canny point, is that immediately, like, they've normally done that post-Mania anyway, but go abroad, but actually doing events in the Leon show and the Bash in Berlin. And it feels like even if the cards aren't great, you kind of have to see them because of the atmosphere. And that adds in and of itself a sort of different dynamic. And then I think there's that fan element to it where one set of crowds don't want to be upstaged by another set of crowds. They have to take it to a kind of like a whole new level about how ridiculously hot they are. So I'm assuming some of these shows, it's just going to be people screaming for 3 hours, even during the video packages, just like non-stop. But they've kind of managed to work out how to almost like avoid the big slump. And even if there is that bit of softening towards the end of the year, they do know that actually as soon as you get into December, you're thinking Rumble. And as soon as you get into Rumble, you're into another kind of hot period then in the build up to Mania. So it's just more joined up thinking, which adds to Gareth's point earlier on about marketing and PR, but actually we need to really properly plan out how we do our year and how we plan out all of their PLEs.
I think it's an interesting one as well, is because it feels like it almost exists in a different universe to traditional wrestling. I think in terms of what it is and the way it's consumed, it's WWE is brilliantly joined up in that it knows what it is and its audience know what it is. And like, I'll come on and I'll laugh and I'll mock about like the production and the big entrances and the music and things, and the matches, don't seem, they're almost secondary, big, big characters, big angles and things like that, like brought to the fore. But it's definitely like, what WWE is about. There's literally, it's got a clear stamp on it, so the audience can tune into Raw or SmackDown and they know what they're getting and they're serving them. And in a lot of instances, stuff can feel like quite primitive and not that layered and things like that. And in some instances, they do put a bit more effort in and try and deliver on that. And like I think that's a massive tick in the box. And to me, like, it almost has that, like, do you know when you'd have like X Factor in its pomp, or Dancing with the Stars, or something like that? It almost feels like it's this TV entity that's a big, popular, glitzy, like, the format. You know what you get. Somebody's getting turned away on X Factor, and they come back later on the show, and they get they get to come out on stage. Oh no, the brilliant guy. You know what I mean? Like, and you all see it coming a million miles away and stuff like that. But it's serving
Jimmy
that
turns
big,
on Jimmy
big,
turns on
big,
Jay.
big. It's serving
Families fight Benno.
popular audience, and it almost feels like that's what it is. Like to me, it feels like it's that big TV product that people can latch onto and watch easily and enjoy because it's big and it's popular. And where to your point about almost like the longevity that comes back to me is, we know though as hardened wrestling fans the life cycle of a booker kind of thing, and how obviously this is the Bloodline story has been central to obviously this whole boom period. We've seen Triple H as a booker in like NXT, and once the indie lads that he could pop a number with dried up, suddenly he was a bit creatively bankrupt. The product definitely started to wane. It was hot and things. NXT was hot as that secondary product for that time period, with a formula of quite basic TV, week to week, formulaic. You knew what was happening. Some pay-per-views with some like big moments and things like that happened on them with certain stars. He could prove you wrong, but I'd question, has he got the longevity to be in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, evolving past the Bloodline to be able to keep other stars up at that level that keeps people and maintains that level of interest for that period of time? And possibly where you're talking about like a softening of numbers there, maybe there is a small indication that people underneath the Bloodline are starting to maybe want a little bit something more, or maybe something different that's not there, kind of thing.
Relatives as Roman got left. That's the question, I think. You more think he'd pull out that?
Yeah,
that's common.
It's an I mean, I almost feel in terms of his role as like booker per se. I mean, there's the obvious differences that he has from Vince that are going to help with that longevity. One of which is he is receptive to other ideas and other people writing the storylines. So we look at Heyman, for example. It's like he kind of embraces the fact that he's got this guy under contract and he can use him, and that's canny thinking. NXT, for all of its faults, and trust me, I've watched Halloween Havoc this weekend, there is at least joined up thinking about how it connects to the main show and how these wrestlers are now being brought up that never existed when he was booker of it. Because it was just like they brought up, and it was just like
he was scared to send them up, weren't he? He's admitted that.
It was the worst thing. You didn't want people sent up because you went, well, this is going to be ruined. There isn't that kind of level of fear there. You kind of see who the next generation of people are going to bring up, and when they are brought up, like a Trick Williams, like a Roxanne Perez, they're going to mean something. They're going to mean something to that audience.
Well, look, JP, look at Bron Breakker and Tiffany Stratton, for example. You can see they're getting positioned right now. They're in good, like, solid stories. Like, one's IC champ, one's Miss Money in the Bank. You can tell they're going to be elevated up the card in the next 12 months, 100%. So
which, when you look at their NXT runs, I mean, Bron Breakker's for large swathes of it was dull. His matches weren't very interesting. He had a look. He just got annoyed that he wasn't allowed to use his proper name and embrace the heritage of the character. That's kind of gone away, and that's an impressive thing that they've managed to do. Even Tiffany Stratton, she wasn't around for a long time in NXT. She wasn't like this NXT mainstay, but they're able to do that, and they're able to bring them up, and they've also, I think it's added enthusiasm to the people who work in NXT, because they can see, actually, if they succeed here, that there is a chance for them on the main roster. There's no reason why that isn't the case. And I think all of that kind of helps. It's like a virtuous circle, isn't it? Yeah. That all of these different component parts of the company, we talked about the marketing and the PR, talked about the idea, their relationships with other media organizations, the overall creative, and it's almost going into the first question, just they're not shitting the bed, because it can't be understated that they're starting from an incredibly low bar for all of this stuff. We're starting from a point where that it was fucking unwatchable. It felt like for years for me. It was genuinely unwatchable, and that isn't the case.
Still is for Gareth. But like, I mean, it still is for a lot of our audience. You know, I would say getting into that part of the kind of the conversation, because it isn't just, you know, often for fans like us. Because all of the things we're listing as positives, and just quickly to sidebar, like I have got more. While the numbers are softening a little bit at the end of this year, and with Matty a little bit, I think Netflix is going to help next year, and when it comes to Triple H as a booker, because he is so slow and steady, and because he is so risk averse, and because he is so, you get your 5-match pay-per-views and that's all you get, I'm a little bit more bullish on at least this, you know, portion of WWE fans who are loving it will continue to be super served, I think, for a longer stretch of time. But to me, that's what we always say, JP. It's like it's spreadsheet booking, because he's playing the best. Triple H is playing a cracking game of EWR. He's ticking all these boxes.
85% all the way, Benno. Solid.
I wouldn't go that high, but you know, it's a highish number, and everyone's happy. And you know, at least as far as the people who enjoy this type of thing are enjoying it. So like, all of those things are true, as JP said. All of those mechanics are there for this to be a well-run business, I would say, for long down the line. But it does take us to our next question, Gareth, which is, you know, is it actually good though? You know, from like, is it just, we always talk about it, is it just that it's competent? You might not remember, we had a bit of a drunken conversation in the pub about that, about whether, you know, I think maybe you're more along the line of competent. I'm not quite at good, don't smile too much, Matty, but I think I'm closer to good in that Venn diagram than you are, you know, no. Depending on the week where I am along that line. But like, you know, you watch the show, Gareth, and you know, we talk all those business metrics, and we talk all the reasons why they continue to be doing really well. But like, do you watch like a SmackDown this week and then scratch your head and go, but how it's shit? Like, is that not like your immediate take when you throw it on?
100%, like 100%, and I think it's something can be hot and not good, or bang average at the same time. Like that's a fact. The X Factor is the example I used before. There's how many TV shows, what you know, look at the best performing films of all of you know the last 10 years. Look at the best performing music artists of the last 20 years and things like that. There is a lot of bang average stuff there that sells millions and millions, or is watched by millions of people. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is the best. You know, the best, or operating at the highest level. That the two things that can go hand in hand. And you know, you clipped a bloody rant of mine when I watched, you know, when I was watching Raw.
Yeah, I was in Vegas
week.
At least for that, and I went on the show. I'm gonna get one tonight.
Got me finger on the button, Gareth. I'm already hitting record, mate.
You know, but that was me. Like, I think I'd like to think that people who like listen to this show know that I'll try and be balanced, and if there's something that I don't think I'm going to like and I do like, I'll say it, like, and vice versa. And I was genuinely watching Raw for those weeks, months at that point, going, come on then, I'm open to this, like, show me what's so good about it. And then that wasn't the experience that I was having. My WWE watching has tailed off recently, but then, you know, again, it feels like there is an element of like buzz in certain elements, you know, when you're on social media. So it's like, okay, I'll check in on that. I'll watch this promo. I'll watch this match, and you know, right down to watching this entire show of SmackDown the other day. I don't know how this SmackDown ranks versus a typical SmackDown. To be honest, I've got you know, I've got no idea how this compares to a SmackDown for the last two months, say. But it was so average, and that was something where I was like watching. I'd watch Dynamite in the mindset of, I am a lapsing AEW fan. I'm someone who is watching less and less AEW because the product is just getting objectively worse. This wasn't miles better than Dynamite. This wasn't miles worse than Dynamite. They were just in the same ballpark for me. Like, legitimately, like, I was probably entertained by both products at the same level. Like, and I can pick it apart. I can go through it. That Randy Orton Triple H opener to the show if that happened on Dynamite between two characters on Dynamite with that same setup, the same verbiage and things, you'd be laughing your head off, Matty, and pointing at him and saying how bad it was.
Yeah, because Tony Khan would probably be doing it with a Johnny Hungy who he's got zero. Did 20 years of history there, Gareth, for the start. Just 20 years of history.
King of the Nunchucks.
Because so it's got relevance straight away though. That's got rank straight away because there's history between two characters.
There is history there between the character Randy Orton and Chief Kent Officer Paul Triple H Levesque coming out with his, there is.
Doesn't like being on telly, Gareth.
The whole and like the whole premise of it, like, I'm trying to protect you, Randy Orton, absolutely massive, fucking enormous bloke who's been killing people for 25 years, for a quarter of a century on our TV show. Like, but I've got to protect you from Kevin Owens because that dastardly Kevin Owens. And then by the end of the promo, oh yeah, go on, you can have your match. Go on, you asked for your match. Go on, you can have your match. Like, hang about. Like, what did we achieve there in that time? That was.
I mean, Gareth, are we not listening to the promo? Are we not listening to what they're saying here? Like, what's going on, mate? I mean,
that was
just come off 18.
I thought Orton's performance was good. I'm sympathetic to what Matty's saying about the history of the characters, and I like the fact that it, like, they broke the fourth wall in that, like, Orton just went to Gorilla and grabbed Triple H, and like that area exists. It's not like it's another planet, you know what I mean? They're making it part of its actual living, breathing building. I appreciated that element of it, but the segment itself, yeah, like, it felt like the criticism I got of the Bloodline story, like, hang on, surely, like, Triple H, surely there was another week in that, Matty, you know, at the very least, like, of, like, you know, I'm not going to give you that match, I'm going to protect you. Like, go on, you can have it. Like, to Garrett's point, like, that's...
Yeah, but...
The delivery was average as well. For two people who were of that stature, who were big stars, who've been on telly for a quarter of a century or more, kind of thing, their delivery was, like, Triple H was rubbish. I don't, he didn't come across like with any level of star power or massive charisma or anything like that. He was just a guy. He was just a guy talking.
He's just a guy. Like, I do think. I'm not saying it was the greatest segment I've ever seen, but I think it was really good. Like, Orton, he was. No, not of all time. No, not of all time. But it was one of them where I think they played it well. Like, he come across as the guy that's, like, you know, had a bit of, like, sympathy for him. Like, you've just come back from 18 months out with your back. And I thought he put Kevin Owens over really strong for someone who's been on telly for a decade, and he's reheating Kevin Owens again. And he's got that history of turning on people, and then the way they spun it where, like, this time, Triple H was saying, this time I could see in his eyes that, like, it's a bit different, where he actually trusted you guys, and his guard was down. I thought he'd done a great job of getting Kevin Owens over at this point in the game. Do you know what I mean? I thought that was really well done. Selling on the fact that Orton is this vulnerable, like, veteran now, who is one powerbomb on the apron away, dare I say. They could do a big angle from putting him out and heating Kevin Owens up as this heel, because, you know,
it's so scary. Go on, you can have your match. Go on. He talked to us.
He put it in his head. What would Triple H do if he was a competitor? There you go. It's simple.
He brought up fucking
stuff.
turning up to his house and putting the windows through, didn't he, Matty? So you liked it.
In one of the best. I included that on the Ramble playlist. I was
pissed off that I knew what that reference was. I was fuming about it.
That's why I'm here, man.
That's where I can see that, and, like, I just feel like, for me, like, it was just, they went too extreme. Like, there's selling something and then there's overselling something, because Triple H did act like Randy Orton was going to die at the hands of Kevin Owens. It's like, hang on, has that been earned on telly? We talk about earned a lot on Dynamite. Has that been earned, really?
They've got to deliver something, don't get me wrong. They've got to deliver something at the end, which, as to all our points, and JP specifically, they probably will deliver something now, whereas 10 years ago, they promise all stuff and then not deliver something. So I think they will deliver, and you'll get a new version of Kevin Owens, which will bleed into whatever Sami Zayn does. And it's all tying in, all these stories now, for what you're saying about Triple H as a booker. He's tying them all in superbly. Like, he can't be criticised for that, for me. Like, honestly, it's so good.
I mean, to that point, Gareth, yeah, from the spreadsheet point of view, Owens is going to come out this feud stronger. Orton is in one of the strongest points he's been in WWE. It's just like that likeable babyface. Like, all of those boxes are being ticked, you know, even if the delivery of it maybe isn't for someone like yourself, and sometimes not me.
And that's it. Like I say, it's joined up. They, like, you know, said previously, it knows what it is. They know what they're presenting in front of people. I think for me, it's that thing of I don't know. there's an over-egging of the pudding of how good stuff is, I think. Like, personally, based on what I see people reacting like to things online, on social media, versus the reality of watching it in front of your own eyes and going, actually, like wait a minute, that's the sort of thing that we would be sitting back and scrutinising the nth degree of every detail, almost, of every word or sentence that someone says on Dynamite, and if there was a slight flub or something like that, or something wasn't delivered with massive shit, that promo rubbish kind of thing. And I almost feel like, because WWE is successful, things don't get held to the same standards. Like things can slide because the arena's full. Things can slide because
I've got negatives, Gareth. I've got a lot of negatives about WWE. It's not all rosy, one which we'll get into some in a bit. I've got a few flaws.
Comparing, like you said, X Factor, Gareth, I suppose that's not the best example for this conversation, but like if you were comparing, trying to think of two different types of shows, Sopranos and what's something like Law and Order.
Yeah,
a great episode of Law
Criminal
and Order.
Minds.
The same as a great episode of Sopranos. They're serving different masters in different ways, so the criticism's going to be about different things.
No, I'll wait till AEW because I don't want to jump the gun, because that's the whole. What you just said is the complete opposite for AEW. They don't know what they're saving. They had their base of what they should save, and they don't know.
That's the problem, and that is the problem.
We'll get back to that after, of course. Sorry to jump ahead, but that's what is,
Yeah, you've kind of hit the nail. I mean, I fall down more towards, and I'll watch snippets on YouTube of Raw and SmackDown a lot of the times, and that is the kind of, like, in some ways that's how it's almost meant to be taken in. I feel a lot of the time it's just like, these are the big takeaways they want you to have, and it's any creative misgivings you might have about the company do get masked over by the business metrics, and the arguments around it can get shot down pretty much away because of the business metrics, because they're there, because they're able to charge ridiculous price. Sorry, Matty, but for WrestleMania tickets,
things aren't related, are they? Like, they're doing well business wise because that stuff is. It's like that different conversation, isn't it, between what's like good from an artistic point of view not being necessarily the same as what's good.
That's what Gareth's saying about the movies and against artists and stuff like that. And this is what we always say, and I'm not shitting on our debate, because it is all preference, like Gareth's saying there. It's ticking boxes, it's joining up dots to dots, but he doesn't like the delivery, and he doesn't like what he's seeing visually on the telly, and that's fair play. That's fair play.
And I think another part that goes along with it, though, is the things that sit in between, that almost like exist, like no one talks about. Like, so I watched that Andrade versus Carmelo Hayes best of 7 like match that immediately came after this. So Game 7 of 7. I don't know why it had to be branded as Game 7 instead of Match 7. Is it because we're in a basketball arena that we need to get that point across? But like again, it's a best of 7. So it's best of 7 series that ends in some interference, and
you chose the wrong week to watch that series, though, Gareth. That was the worst one they had.
To set up a match.
They've been good matches, Benno. They've been good. Come on. To set up a match though with LA Knight, and that's fine. But if I'm watching a best of 7 series, that ain't the payoff I want, where the special guest referee like gets involved, batters both lads, and then fucking walks away holding his belt, going like, neither of you deserve a shot. Hang about, I've been invested in a best of 7 series here for 2 months. Like, this is the payoff, and like again, little things like that no one's going to talk about. That I will never see anyone criticize that on my Twitter feed, because it won't happen, because nobody wants to go on to nobody wants to go onto social media to criticize elements of the WWE product, because it's almost like it's in nobody's interests to do that. They only want to highlight, this tag team title match happened, or this this angle happened at the end of the show. But you see the end of the show, mate, you don't forget about the bad stuff. Like, that's what happens. That's why. That's real.
I would say. I would say your overall points to Gareth in that, like, like the women's backstage like conversation they have on that show, or like those little individual segments almost like wash over people, and it's not significant enough that it's a point of conversation, like a bad Mercedes promo might be on a Dynamite or whatever, you know.
Because she's meant to be the biggest wrestling female star in the world. That's why. That's why people have got a problem with that.
Can't help himself, can he?
That's right, though. People need to say it.
According to WWE, and we've now found out she's not. Now that she's out of the WWE system,
someone said it on this podcast.
WWE presented her in that light, and everybody ate that up as being the case. But the reality is actually something different. And often, when you take that WWE sheen away from somebody, then the criticism does start, and then people do realise, oh, this isn't what I thought it was, you know. And because it's not caught up in the bubble of the machine, and that's the prime example that you've just raised there, Matty.
Yeah,
but following on from that, no one's talking about that Naomi Candice LeRae match that immediately followed that. Absolute dog shit. Like that was atrocious. Which then bled into this Cody Rhodes Gunter promo, and I'm telling you now, if you try and tell me that this was better, it wasn't worse, but it wasn't better than Kyle Fletcher's promo on Dynamite. It was of a similar level. In fact, it probably had less structure and less joined up narrative.
I'm leaving this one to Benno first. Benno, you're the Cody man.
This was absolutely awful, and I won't hear any different.
Come on, Ben.
Why is it on?
You're the Cody man. He's your man.
I would say for that segment, I thought Gunther was fantastic. I think Gunther was not in the same stratosphere as Kyle Fletcher, shaving his head, struggling to talk like a human being. I think Gunther's promos have been very good. I think this was a good example of it. Cody, if we were reviewing SmackDown, I would say way too much in the heelish side of things. Felt that whole corporate, I'm the company man, I'm the new John Cena stuff was like way too much for me. And at the end of the day, they're arguing over a trophy belt that they're having a match for in Saudi Arabia.
The worst. It's the worst.
Like, even you criticised Matty at the time when they put that in, and I think this was actually better than the last segment with the two of them, because the last segment with the two of them, they really struggled to sell any importance that comes with this belt. But no, I'd push back on Gunther. I would say Gunther's delivery was very good here. He knows what he is as a character. He knows that snobby kind of I'm better than you, how dare you even make eye contact with me type of heel that he is in WWE. And I would my reaction to that segment was, Gunther made a good account of himself. Cody flew too close to the sun. Maybe the heel turn is coming, but Matty's not going to defend it.
I just put a penny in Benno there and just let him talk. I mean, it's just great. I love that. And this is why we do it, though, lads. We're all over them, and that's what it should be about wrestling. JP, sorry, I
can't agree. Like Walter's delivery, as Raman said here, like is on a different stratosphere to Kyle Fletcher. We're talking different languages, so there we go. Matty, your thoughts?
Sorry, JP, you go first, mate. You wanted to say something then, please.
I was just going to say with the Gunter stuff, and this sounds like with that, I kind of appreciated there was like a level of almost like I'll say like realism to it. It was like he was behaving like an arrogant prick but a real human being. Whereas the problem I had, I think, with say the Carl Fletcher segment was it was just like it's too much. It's just sort of. And then at the end, he's shaving his head, and there isn't really any sort of like clear objective for that. Whereas Gunter going, no, I'm not doing charity work. I'm not fucking interested in it. I admire that. I admire that at the best of times.
It's a good line. That was a very, very good line.
I thought that, like say, there is and this is probably the bigger thing about WWE is there's a level of, I don't say comfort in a lot of the wrestlers, but a lot of the top line wrestlers sort of know who they are and who they are expected to be. And there isn't this, you don't have writers making them do what feels to me like they're doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. I mean, it would happen more around the mid card than it would do at the top level, but it's that top level of that's really what counts here. And I think in terms of a Gunter, it feels like they've immediately in that top line mix, he just feels like he's there. And I'm always remembering that basically he's holding the IC title. That's always what that belt will be to me. It's just a glorified Intercontinental belt, and it's like it almost feels like it made me want to watch that match. I'm sorry,
not the match, JP, but not for the overall Crown Jewel Championship.
I wish this.
I could give a shit about that.
for one.
I wish it was just a one-on-one champion v champion, even. Yeah. 100%. And sorry, Ben, but what I'll say about Cody, proper love-hate relationship, it depends on the context and the conversation with Cody, is like, even I'll bring Roman into it from last year when Roman absolutely destroyed him on the mic about like, you started your own company, you couldn't get over it. Cody will take them shots. Whereas like if this was a John Cena or The Rock just nailing the heel, they're not getting a comeback. They're not getting Cena. That's why I hate Cena. He destroyed so many heels that he couldn't even come back. Whereas Cody, to be fair to him, he is this big Mr. Rah-Rah, I'm this big baby face. But he'll let people fire away at him. And that's why I said at the time, Ben, it agrees with Roman beating him first time. And I'm giving him so much credit, I've even got the shivers myself. It's like, he can afford, he's that over, Benno, that he can afford to do it. That's the whole point of Cody being this big baby face, is right?
And I would say as well, I'll let Gareth eviscerate it now, but like I think as a segment, it achieved something that I didn't think was possible with this belt. And I think Cody breaking type and being the one to go after Gunther and start the physicality with it, gave it, like you were saying there, gave it a little bit of juice that it didn't have going in. Still an uphill battle, still a belt I don't necessarily care about, but yeah, I thought it was. I did overall think it was a good segment. So, tell me why I'm wrong, Gareth.
I think Cody was terrible. I think Cody wrote. I'll take on board what you like saying about like Gunther and the presence and stuff like that. I didn't like his delivery in some of the things. I hit that first line that he hit where he was like some ITV 1980s game show host or something like that in his like little jokey delivery of that. Just that wasn't having that at all. When he's bringing up things to like Cody about like. About you wanting the John Cena schedule and all that. That's just too like, oh, come on, that's
too on the nose.
It's too inside. Like it's just easy, lame
sure
kind of thing.
Face trait out of them.
But Cody, but with Gunther saying it to him though as well. Like I just thought that didn't work. I thought Cody was the worst thing about it. He was rambling. He was absolutely all over the place. He was just like. I felt like he hasn't been scripted here. He's almost gone out and just thought he can just like cut a promo on his Todd and like try and hit a few points, and he couldn't do it. Like some of the stuff was so bad where he's talking about like Gunther being for an educated man in your double-breasted suit and all this like was just like lame and just pathetic. He was flying about all over the place about reasons why he wanted to win. He's got to throw his obligatory reference into Dusty Rhodes and like things into there. He's like talking about how his whole career's been built on guts and all this, and it was just like fucking hell, pull a string on your back kind of thing and just say some random lines that actually don't join up, that don't have any sort of like holistic meaning from this promo as a whole. You're just firing out soundbite, come back with a totally unrelated line that's another soundbite, and just appearing just as corny as hell. It was just all over the place, meaningless. The only part of it that was worth a shit was the last second kind of thing, was when he attacked him, and that was like, okay, that stands out. Did I really need to sit for fucking 9,000 hours and listen to you just talk, ramble on? I think they lost the crowd during the promo. I really do. I don't think the crowd was with him on some of them things. I think he came across a bit lame and a bit less than in some of these places. But then obviously you then get Axel D to come in and like attack at the end, and then and it's like, okay, so now we've got an interference attack there just after I've watched Naomi Candice LeRae with the interference distraction finish there. After I've just watched Andrade Carmelo Hayes with the interference end to the show. It's like, come on, do we have to just pile this up next again? If this was Dynamite, can they not change it? Why has every match got to end in an interference or somebody getting involved? That would be fucking all, like, that'd be all you would think. But again, just get.
That's because it's a WWE thing. That's where that criticism comes from, that they're doing WWE stuff.
Thank you, Richard Benson. I
didn't think they did WWE shit anymore, though. I thought they were better than that. I thought this was booked better than that. I thought it was written better than that now, but evidently not.
I mean, it's still WWE, isn't it?
It's still going to have some sort. It's just not, as JP alluded to before, you won't get the stuff that's the obvious, like even the straight Gareth. Like I agree with the LA Knight one. Like everyone could see that was going to end up as a triple threat match. Like and Tony Khan does it, and that's been used for us, I hate it. It's one of the easiest, lamest, and they tried it a different way with the baby face doing it instead of the heel screwing yourself out of it, which didn't come across great for LA Knight. He did act too heelish, and I know he's that kind of character that doesn't give a shit type thing, but it was just awful. It was. And sorry, even going even more all over the place. That's one of the things about Triple H, what I've said, and I include Cody in this, even though he's doing, like, you know, he's still that ultra babyface. Once these guys do finish the stories, like Cody, like LA Knight and the champions, they haven't got that same, like, thing for me. LA Knight's still over, but he's not as interesting as he is when he was on the come up. It's about keeping him over when you're champion. Maybe that's a wrestling thing in general. Well, yeah, yeah, maybe.
I'd say on Cody, I'd say for him, like, all those criticisms are valid, absolutely. But I think it's how well he's doing the rest of it that means he gets away with it, and means, like, that negative part of his game, I think has always been a negative part of his game, some of the material he uses in his promos, he gets by, and he continues to be, you know, big drawing, you know, emotional, get you into his matches Cody Rhodes. You almost have to, like, yeah, those negatives do exist, but the overall is there. But I would say in the product as a whole, I would just say, and having Matty here as an example, I just kind of think with WWE, what do WWE fans see that television product as? Like, great promos, great entrances, and, you know, I suppose interference is almost part and parcel of the way they tell their stories, and it's almost like it just goes over your head when you watch WWE, because it's like, well, that's how they move from one to the next. That's what I've signed up for. That's the genre of thing I am watching here. And again, where I push back with AEW is that is not the genre of what people are watching AEW for. I don't know if that's
100%.
Knowing you, Matty, I know that's just, if you were booking an EWR game, every one of your matches would end in it.
Every single one, because that's how I prolong stories and, like, tell turns, and we joke, like, but every event now, and maybe that's just what type of fan I am. And SummerSlam, that's why I like SummerSlam, because it was such a story show, is like, I want to see all that. I want to see, because I've been watching every week. I want to see these turns. I want to see these big moments because I've been watching the build, and when they come, that's why I get so excited and I'm so into it. Like the end of the show, Gareth, don't stop there, mate. Let's keep reviewing this SmackDown because I want to get to the end. But what I will say on this is,
you can't do too much on one show, and that was true this week. Like every single segment, including what we're about to get into.
But even that, Gareth, where Randy Orton made the save for Cody, that's tying into this eventual thing. Where Triple H is a slug booker, you're going to get Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton, and that ties into obviously this Kevin Owens stuff. For me, it's.
I thought he was I thought he was really brave coming out, Randy. I thought he'd have been sat in the back shaking like a shitting dog over Kevin Owens.
His mate, though. It's his mate. It's his mate, isn't it? Boy, he broke into the business. You know what I mean? Kind of.
But yeah, I would say WWE is the company where the matches almost largely on the TV don't matter, which is where the disconnect happens with, like, fans like us for watching it. But I would say to get to the end of SmackDown, because this is turned into a SmackDown review, but it's a great case in point, isn't it? It's a great sample of what that product is versus what we're about to get into with AEW, is they, in the second half of the show, gave, in setting up a new act, an old act, but a new act in Motor City Machine Guns, they gave you a 3-star match, which is pretty much what you got there with Gargano and Ciampa, which I'm thought Garrett's gonna have great things to say about there. But then they kind of broke format and used the nonsense with the bloodline that Matty is obviously massively into. The great, fantastic story, capital letters,
Thank you.
Story, and all the rest. And I think I saw you tweet that today, to put the Motor City Machine Guns over. So for me, Gareth, that would be an example of them using that WWE structure in some ways, but then in other ways kind of breaking that WWE structure to achieve a name that I would say AEW doesn't often get. They managed to set up Motor City Machine Guns in one night and make them, you know, a new set of life for this WWE tag division, to make them, you know, a bona fide pushed act that people hopefully will invest in going forward. So they achieve that aim, and then they achieve the other aim of delivering the bloodline drama that Matty loves and delivering, you know, that side of things. So, like, that's a great example for me of where, like, it's not necessarily to my taste, you know, the interference and the nonsense and all the mic work that got us from match to match, but it's an example of something that, like, using that genre to tell that story was massively effective in hitting both of those aims. and for me was one of the better examples of Triple H's booking during this period, and what they managed to deliver there. So I don't know what you thought on it, but yeah, I think that's a good example of like what on face value fans like us might not like out of WWE, but what they do effectively.
So you will smile now, Matty, because from this point onwards, like this was the best part of the show. And because it was clear, it was clearly what they cared about. This was the important thing. This was the thing that most thought and effort had gone into, like on the show this week. Motor City Machine Guns didn't mean a shit, did they? When they came out, they got zero pop. Like no one cared. You know, rat-a-tat-tat written on the wall behind them. Like, we've got to be really literal about them machine guns. They're not real ones. They're just like little spug guns or something like that they're using there. It's a family audience, guys. Just thought we'd reiterate that on the Tron. But
it is America, mate, so all bets are off.
Clearly they didn't... They didn't tell enough story via vignettes for weeks on end, so everybody knew who the Motor City Machine Guns were prior to them to launching. But by the end, everybody knew they'd had a big moment, and they're probably going to be the better for it for a 2 month period, But this probably would have been more powerful if there hadn't been so much bloody interference and stuff earlier on in the show, kind of thing. Because for me, at this point, it felt like, more. Here we go. I'll have some more kind of thing. So again, there was that kind of like discipline, I suppose, that run through the booking of the show, start to end, which probably dragged it back a little bit for me. But at the end of it, even though I'm not sitting there crying with hairs standing up on my arms, I knew that people invested in this storyline would be. Whereas I'm sat there going, why are they hugging? Like, to me, I was like knowing what I know about, I was like, hasn't he cost him title matches and things? And
twins, mate. That's why, because they are twins.
What work has been done to get from there to there in this short time period? And that was what I was left questioning. I was like, why is this happening? Like that was going to be a question for you, Matty. For me, is like, why? What is twins? Is that the answer? Is it because they're twins? But they've turned on each other a million times over the last 2 years. They've cost each other big important things. They've been not speaking, and now. Because what?
Yeah, but I'll keep going back to this. If you fell out with your brother over something and you had fights and you done this,
you know me.
I know you, yeah. But if they after 6 months went and looked at you and asked you for help again, you would think about it, wouldn't you? Then if you went out and questioned your other brother,
Matty, that's the problem, right, isn't it?
Well, but then they cost him.
In like 2 weeks.
But then they did cost him everything that he's built on his own, Benno. If you're watching the story, he went out, he left to be his own man. He achieved that, all right? He mightn't have been the world heavyweight champion, like one of us said, but he was the IC champion, and he's one of the
most... Did his brother cost him that?
On Raw. And then his brother, wanted to help him, but the guy who he's brought in, who's recruited that day, never recruited, cost him. So it's all collateral damage in it, Gareth. And then he's ended up being cost the big thing that he wanted to be on his own. It's great. And then he's syndicated that on SmackDown. He's cost them eye for an eye. Fucking great stuff, lads. I mean,
am I making that up though? Did his brother not cost him the world title? Is that true? Like, again, I can't remember that.
That was he saved himself from himself, and you're cute to laugh, lads. He saved himself from the power of the Ula Fala. That's what it was.
That never made any sense, and you can't defend that element of the story.
It does now. Look what Solo's doing, because he's the corrupt with the Ula Fala, Benno. It's corrupted Solo. That's the whole point of this.
All right, I'm on Team Gareth again now. Like, they're just like they are. It's what my biggest criticism of this was, clearly it was effective, but it would have been more effective if they'd actually, and it's against type with Triple H, have more patience to tell the story, because it is awfully quick that Jay is back on
something
the side. And I get it.
Though,
it's like,
at the same time,
for you guys, it's like me watching Sopranos. It's New York taking out like New Jersey's captains, and New Jersey taking out New York's captains. You know, this belt for a belt thing. They're both costing each other belts. What more will this war do, Matty? It's taken too many casualties. That's the reason Jay has to come back into the fold. But that's one of the weaknesses of Triple H's booking for me. We saw it happen with Chad Gable, where like you could see 6 weeks in advance, okay, we're going to get see Otis turn on Chad Gable, and that's going to be a big moment. Sometimes those moments don't land. I don't know what it is. Sometimes maybe it's because it's so predictable and because it's so laid out. This has clearly been so laid out, and somebody clearly has a spreadsheet of where they're doing each of these segments, that it's lost a little bit of like the spontaneity, or lost a little bit of the impact in execution versus what everybody imagined in their minds. Like, I don't get that this week. Like, next week's SmackDown, spoilers for you, Matty, has been taped already. It's in the can. And
Sign on, don't give it away, because
if you want, but I'm sorry, we're doing a wrestling podcast. We've got to talk.
No, I know. There's another guy. There's one of our friends. Hamflet doesn't know. He's trying to avoid it. Sorry, Michael. Sorry, Michael.
But like, they did the big reunion with Roman, Jimmy, and Jay doing a big hug in the ring on next week's SmackDown that like is already out there and everyone's seen. It's like, surely for people like you, Matty, that's the big moment. That's the big moment they're building to.
I'll be honest, like, Benno. I'll even be honest.
That's where the spreadsheet gets in the way, rather than a more
I thought on a tape show, second show as well, at a tape show, even I was like, oh, wait there a minute. But that might tie into what Triple H wants, because he knows it's a tape show. He might want the cliffhanger this week to get a rating for next week. You don't know how he's laying it out. It's stuff like that. Because when I first thought, I thought, no, because what we've been saying as well, and what it might mean nothing to no one, Roman says the Yeet as well. That's a big moment that's been built up for fucking a year and a half. That genuinely is, though.
That's a damning indictment.
But
that's one of them, isn't it? It is, though.
It's good to have a plan, but it's better to have a good plan. And like, clearly they've had a plan, but I'm not sure it's been a good plan yet. Like, it's.
But the shuttle must be in the works. Either The Rock's coming back, for them to do this before Crown Jewel as well, and not before Survivor Series. This could be the go on for the Survivor Series, where he's joined the War Games team, and you could sell it on that. There's another 4 or 5 Raw and SmackDowns in between. So I don't know what is Heyman going to turn The Rock, but this is where
Heyman's going to turn. Like, that's.
I've got trust in Triple H that, all right, it might seem a bit sped up, but something big must be happening at the same time at the other end of it. So we will see.
Well, I tell you what, it might be that bum Johnny Gargano accidentally super kicks Tommaso Ciampa, and Ciampa gave him a little look. That'd be a good idea, wouldn't it? Gargano versus Ciampa. That could be a new, fresh storyline. They could lean into. Oh,
Triple H.
But Ewan says here, Benno,
they are never.
There's the Saudi show has got 7 matches instead of 5, so he's breaking the mold for there, because there's a 6-man bloodline match at Saudi. Yeah.
Did the Saudis demand it then for the cash, and that's why they had to hurry it?
Maybe.
We're gonna get into that in a minute, but like,
they heard blood and they were just like, "Yeah, we're in."
Yeah. But I would say, like, although the Bloodlines is probably the headline for Matty, for me it's mostly Machine Guns, and I would say they did, like, everyone questioned it. They were a mystery team. Then they announced on fucking Twitter that they were coming, that it was them that were the mystery team, and I thought that was an odd and bad decision.
It's weird.
But as far as like focus goes, and like the commentators hitting you with it over the heads, they've been in Japan and they've done this and they've done that, and them being a constant on the shows the last few weeks to build up to this moment, they laid all that foundation. Maybe they backed a team that some of us might not back. It's like AEW. Would I back Private Party? Probably not. But if you're gonna, you should go all in, and that's what they've done here. And they've given them every chance to swim, which does not happen on the other side, unfortunately.
Like, Corey Graves is going hard on the sell for them, isn't he? Like, he's really putting them over so much. Yeah.
I'm not convinced it'll be sustained, though. I mean, I think we're all realistic about where it is, but in some ways, it's the fact they've made the effort. Yeah. I think that's the biggest surprise, because that would have been the thing I would have expected. You imagine what this would have been like under Vince McMahon. It would have been, right now we have to destroy them just so I can say a big fuck you in a battle that exists in his head.
I think that's one. The way it's usually this time of year, JP, with me and you start booking WrestleMania, and for the floor of Triple H, like, I can't see anything. That I thought that the other day, what you were saying in the chat there, I think they're going to go with a proper KO v Sammy at WrestleMania this year, because they done one when it was, I think it was 2021, but it was half full, the stadium. It didn't mean much at the time. I think that one could be sold as a big match. That I was thinking that myself the other day for next year. So yeah, I'd take that. I'd take that.
But in summary for me, that wasn't me saying SmackDown was absolute shit. Like, it wasn't. It was bang average. It was fine. It was no better or worse than these Dynamites that have been like criticising to high heaven over the last few weeks and things like that. It was on that level Did it feel bigger? Yes. Did I see clips of stuff happening all over like my Twitter timeline and things like that felt big and felt important? Yes. Like that's almost what WWE is, isn't it? To me, it was almost like the perfect case in point for me of that general overall feeling that like I have to the product. It was like this thing on the surface on social media and things looks great when you like dive in. It's not as great as it looks on the surface, but it's to your point, Benno, it's servicing the audience with the things that they want out of it. So is that a bad product? If it's not a good product to me, but if it's given the people what they want, then then maybe that is good, but it could be better still. Could be a lot better.
If it's a graph, I feel like Dynamite, we're going to get it to AEW in a minute, is like here all the way across, and SmackDown was like up, and then down where Dynamite was, but then up again. And like I think you have more of those peaks and valleys across those shows, and maybe, you are right, the valleys get ignored to talk about the peaks instead. Whereas right now the AEW product maybe doesn't have those peaks to talk of, as maybe part of it as well. But before we get into AEW, one last talking about we did have on here, and it is a important one. We say on the eve of the Saudi show, like we talk about, like, can this hot streak continue? Can they continue it where they are? It was asked on our Discord today. I know JL talked about the WWE fan base as a whole. Like, are they Teflon, JP? Like, as much as like we can talk about like what is working from a product point of view, what is working from a WrestleNomics point of view and a spreadsheet point of view, like all of this is still happening. It bears saying, and we talked about it at length on the weekend show, in the face of like scandal after scandal. Like, it shouldn't be lost. They're going to Saudi again, and we've all, to Garrett's point about like kind of, maybe we're numb to it. We're just numb to it. And it's like, all those like massive conversations we have about it. Are they going to Saudi again? Oh, well, we kind of all move on with our day. Make a bit of a joke. Is Punk going on? And then we move on with our day. The Janelle Grant case is going on. They have now been named, as we talked about on the weekend show. In it, there are 2 cases going on right now, 2 legal cases to do with, sex crimes that WWE has been named in. One is, obviously the Janelle Grant case, and 2 is the Ring Boy scandal. It's, gotten a little bit of actual mainstream press this last week or so, which has been fantastic to see. But it almost feels I don't know, Trumpian, JP, I don't know if that's the way, but like that's happening, and there's almost like a sidestepping of like Triple H might get asked an awkward question about it at the next, presser, or we might talk about it on podcasts, but then it'll just go back to, and it's almost like the 2 completely separate, disparate things they've managed to duck that. But at its core, WWE is the heart of 2 very, very serious legal cases going on right now. And yeah, as JL said, is the fan base just less liberal than we used to think of wrestling fans as? Maybe not quite, that type of fan. But you see Trump at Madison Square Garden. He's got like Hogan backstage, and he's doing all kinds of wrestling related stuff, and just kind of leaning into the UFC fan base, which we'd always see as more right wing than WWE. Don't know if that's part of it, JP, but they do seem like the Teflon, and this stuff all going on simultaneously as all the other stuff we can talk about just gets left to the side.
I think it's an interesting one. In some ways, I view the Ring Boy scandal and the lawsuit that's come about, and the Janelle Grant lawsuit, as separate to the Saudi show in terms of I think the problem, I hate to say it, but sports washing's worked. It's worked. In the Premier League, we don't talk about Newcastle's ownership model. That's kind of gotten out the window. It's, Man City's one, even with all of the various charges.
Boxing, JP? But
that's the big thing, is the boxing. What they've done, and this is what boxing fans didn't. I always get the impression they didn't need the kind of like impetus to kind of throw any sense of like, actually, should we be doing this out the window? Because the Saudis have done the sports washing, but basically we just give you exactly what you want. You want these big fights? Yeah, we'll fucking pay for them, all of them. We can unify belts, and promoters are being thrown so much money that they're going to do that. So I think the Saudi one, that sports washing has worked, and the idea of seeing Riyadh season up, as long as not all the events are held in Saudi, and you end up with like your Joshua versus Dubois that are happening in Wembley Stadium, that's always going to serve that fan base. Actually, we're going to get the atmosphere, because that's what the Saudis can't deliver on for that. So I think from that perspective, they are Teflon. Taking Saudi money for for sports is just now part and parcel of life. I think the Premier League are grateful that the Saudis exist because it's an off-ramp for overpaid players. You want rid of players, there's now another league you can throw them in. So I think when it comes to WWE, because they were effectively the canary in the coal mine when it came to this stuff, they just proved it worked. And if you just don't reply, you don't respond, you can get away with it. And this almost ties into when you were saying about going to see The Apprentice in the pre-show. It's that you just don't sell. You don't show weakness. You don't show that actually, we're having to think about it. It's just never apologise. It's not a thing. When it comes to the Janelle Grant and the Ring Boy scandal, I kind of wonder, and some of it's a difficulty because of the media landscape. I think there will be a massive amount of negative press. It's almost like me predicting what I think will happen. TKO have the money to throw at this in order for it to go away or be tied up in litigation. And they also have the Vince McMahon, if they need to just completely throw it under the bus and all of the crimes kind of go with him. It hurts them from like a public perspective, but I never thought of their audience as liberal anyway.
Because like that's what I saw, to bring up Brandon Thurston again, like a talking point he was bringing up was like what happened when they were doing the Fabulous Moolah Battle Royal or whatever it was. It was sponsor pressure that put the pressure on. When Vince left the second time, why did that get through? Why did the noise on Twitter and elsewhere break through? Because the sponsors started to listen. That's probably the where the dam breaks. If this Ring Boy scandal, continues to get more mainstream press and, Do the Beast continue to get looped in with that and that becomes more of a story, you might see that. It might be like, well, hang on, can we not, for example, the Janelle Grant side has asked WWE to release anybody who's on who can't talk about any legal cases in the past with WWE, any victims, will WWE release them from those agreements? And sponsor pressure might allow that to happen and might force WWE to go, we need a PR win here because there's some negative press coming. But it would take that. I think it would take something extreme like that with the size of them right now and with the court of public opinion.
And we're seeing as well that like there is unfortunately such a lack of belief from people in what is always termed the mainstream media, that there's this idea of the unwillingness, just the reflexive reaction from a lot of people to go, no, it's not true. Why? Mainstream media is reporting it, so therefore it must be a lie. And it's that horrible path of conspiratorial thinking that kind of ends up taking over. And then it ends up in really where we are today, where everything is so partisan and tribal that people will absolutely double down to the nth degree, saying, nope, this isn't a thing that's going to end up we're just not going to react to this. We're going, this isn't a real event. This isn't actually taking place. I think it can have some impact. I mean, if you look at the Ring Boy scandal, for example, I mean, that should be everything. Particularly a lot of people who were, I don't know, talking about, you remember when that film came out, what was it, The Sound of Something? And it was all like, child sex trafficking and the rest of it. It's like, that was literally happening in WWE and it was brushed over. Yet, no one is willing to, people pick and choose depending on their own political preferences whether or not they decide to go along with it. And I think if it's WWE, they might just view it and go, well, if this sponsor drops out, have we got another sponsor that will take its place? And we've got to talk about then corporate morality. That is very, very limited because people at the end of the day will look at this and go, hang on, is it good for my business to be ultimately advertising with them? And they'll just work out if it's not going to cause that much grief, then we'll just stick with them and they'll ride it out. And they've proven they can ride it out. So depressingly, I think they probably are quite Teflon. And even if they're not, they've got enough money to throw at the problem in order for it to then go away.
I think they'll be back and forth. I think Netflix will be, they'll be in the prime and they'll be on, in more households than they've ever been, and they'll be the positive of that. But I do think there'll be some negatives if, say, another case comes up that we're not aware of right now, or more victims come forward. I could see a dent happening, but I couldn't see it, derailing the train entirely. And the other thing, Will joked about it on the Discord, we do need to move on to AEW. But if Trump becomes president, does Vince return to WWE? I don't think he asked that question on the Discord, and my immediate reaction was no. But no, I think it's still no. I think they know that they get to be the babyface company right now, and they want to keep that status, don't they? And they want to bad man gone, whether it's true or not, is the party line, and they obviously want to keep that going, don't they? So
yeah,
I wouldn't rule anything out, obviously, if Trump does get it. But, yeah.
The problem is Vince McMahon could turn up at Survivor Series wearing a Mel Phillips T-shirt and walk through there, and the crowd would pop for him. That is. And that is
we saw it on SmackDown before he went.
It's their shoot a person on Fifth Avenue moment. There is that. They would not give a fuck. Like, and then he's all right. Then he's on telly. He's all right. Kind of, that kind of plausible deniability in the same way of like things like, WWE's fine now because Vince McMahon's not involved, so it's all okay. All these other people who were in around him, it's fine. Well, it was Vince McMahon. So there's just the book just gets passed and shoved in another direction. I think the only way that they could not be Teflon if there was some kind of very, very visible, multiple layers of people, almost shown out very visibly on TV that it's not just Vince McMahon, it's this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, and suddenly like that might actually be a shock to the system, to people, that there's like that multiple level involvement. But the general WWE fan base does not give a fuck, do they? They'll consume, go to the next week. It's irrelevant to them. It's for the same reasons that Donald Trump can still potentially become president of the United States with everything that he's got, on his, rap sheet. It's
in that film. It's all in there. It's all laid out. It's the reason the Republicans don't want to go see it. But yeah, that's the kind of the sad truth of things, I would say. But yeah, unless there's anything more on that or WWE, we should move on to AEW, and we can talk a bit about the future when we get to the end of AEW. But current state of play of AEW, you alluded to it a few times there, Gareth, when it comes to the hyper criticism. I think Tony Khan will often defend himself with, whether it's earned or not. But I would say right now, it's probably, I'm guessing, unless you're going to say otherwise, Gareth, the lowest I think as a group. A lot of us have been on AEW, and there have been some low points. I definitely found this Dynamite one of the more difficult to just get through. I think me and JP found on Weekend Show. Even if, SmackDown, you can see some boxes being ticked from a promotional point of view, and so, a few signs of, taking note of, as you've put it here, JP, some of the business issues that we can get into. But if we're going to talk about the quality of AEW as a product, and we're going to talk about the clear downswing in popularity in AEW, as WWE's numbers have swung upwards, AEW's have swung downwards. There's just no other way you can cover it with, and cover it very well with an unbelievable, gigantic, massive, incredible, fantastic television deal. You've got to underline how great that is. But every metric behind that deal, like WWE in the 2010s, is on the downswing. Live attendances, as far as TV ratings go, even in the demo, when you go to pay-per-view buys even, I think that's going to be maybe the last thing to fall. As we talked about on Weekend Show, JP, we went through some of the attendances, and it's like, for the Dynamites and Collisions coming up, it's like, it makes really sad reading, because it's thousands and it's hundreds in certain cases. And then you see the pay-per-view and they've sold 6,000 tickets, because, that seems to be the last domino to fall. But I don't think any of us are going to deny that there's a real softening in interest with AEW, but whether it's to do with those business failings, or whether it's to do with the quality of the product, is kind of what we can get into. And I'll throw to you first, Gareth. Yeah, what's your current feeling on it? And yeah, you said there that the Dynamite was maybe on a par with a SmackDown for you this week, but personally, I found Dynamite this week an extremely tough watch if we're using them as like data points. And yeah, I saw some signs of life and some signs of things to be positive for going forwards, but it does feel like a bit of a great place right now, being an AEW fan.
I mean, Matty summed my thoughts up on it in general, in counterpoint to what I was saying to WWE there. He was totally right. It's got no identity. It doesn't know what it is. It's so all over the place. And like I heard you on the Weekend Show, obviously, you're talking about things of the core angle and at the point that it's used within the show, and these different things going on in different, there's almost these little satellite universes happening within AEW that don't seem to be touched by what they're trying to push as like the main angle with the Moxley situation and things, and it almost just feels like, to me, I think I was reading something the other day about 20 plus writers or something like that. It feels like something that's written by
27
people,
writers, isn't it?
Yeah, sat in different rooms who are all given 8 minutes each to write and just go, right, open a door, right, your bit happens now, and open another door, right, your bit happens now, and like there's just no sort of consistent, joined up feel from show to show, but also in terms of generally, you take a step back, what the business is like. Is it like what is the AEW business like? Is it a counter product to WWE? Is it an alternative? Is it like it was supposed to be? Like, if so, then why so much of it come across as WWE done bad? Like that's a problem. Why is one segment that followed by one that's trying to be like a 5-star wrestling match or something that totally doesn't fit what's gone before? Why does the visual aesthetic of it look totally different to what certain things are trying to achieve, and then looks in line with other elements? I just don't think it's just got any brand identity at all. It literally has got no holistic understanding of what are we trying to achieve here, what is our product, what is AEW. It had that initially, and probably the most, initially it had that vision and what it was all about. The booking went to shit, and then Tony Khan took over, and that was probably the best run after that, was where it was joined up, because there were these ideas that all kind of like amalgamated, came from the same place, felt like they came from the same brain for whereas a lot of it previously hadn't. Now we're just back in clusterfuck land where just shit happens, the same shit happens as on repeat, with different person thrown into character A, different person thrown into character B, stuff we've, seen before. And like, there really is no reason to watch it. What are you getting out of AEW that makes you think this is something I need to be tuning in, week to week?
I need to jump in 1 sec, Gareth. Right, so that's what I mean. So honestly, I've been saying this for ages, and without trying to sound like sticking the boot in, Benno, I'm not. Like, I've been asking this question. Honestly, go back and listen. This is nothing new, though. This is nothing new, and it seems like, because I listen to a few reviews all the time, listen to you guys as well. Like, I've been enjoying your stuff, of course, lately with AEW, but it's just so like, is it frustration? Is that what it comes across like? That like Gareth saying, it had this idea, and then it's gone to shit. Like, it just seems so like, I've been asking this question for so long, and obviously we're still talking about it tonight. Like, there's no answer. We said this on Grapple Lads as well when we'd had a bevy. Like, what has gone wrong? What is it? Why is it? You said, Benno, is it Tony Khan burnt out, that he's got other things going on? But then you say he's got no help. As Gareth said, he's got 27 writers. So where is, like, what is the reasoning of why are we at this point? Like,
delegation isn't evil. Bad delegation is the problem. Delegation can be done well, and we got a question about that from one of our people on our Discord. I don't really know what it is right now. It almost feels like, to Gareth's point, watching AEW feels like, unless you live in Tony Khan's head, why would you invest in any of this stuff? It's like there's an audience of one right now for AEW, and it feels like it's him, because he understands the headcanon of why he's just randomly decided to push insert wrestler, why Jay White is all of a sudden a babyface, why he'll just randomly pick someone and they'll get a title shot that week, why Chris Statlander is randomly a babyface, as we talked about on Weekend Show when it comes to this week's Dynamite. Like, I think it's investment for me. Like, it feels like WWE 2010s for, like I said, the TV deal, but it feels like WWE 2010s in that, why would I invest? Like, why would I feel that there's any deeper meaning to anything that's going on in this TV? Like, we've talked about it a million times. Why would I be invested in any of these title belts? Why would I be invested in, any of these people in these roles that
stables?
Why would I be invested in any of these stables? Like, what? Just those answers exist in Tony Khan's head, but they don't exist on the TV. Like, it isn't. I think it isn't a show that's enjoyable right now for me, I would say. It isn't a show that I feel any kind of connection to right now when it comes to AEW. It's just washing over me, the stuff that's on TV, of, as we talked about on Weekend Show, JP. 6 out of 10 across the board, to Gareth's point earlier. Not necessarily outright bad, not necessarily great, but a lot of it is just wrestling for wrestling's sake. And, you know, Rampage and Collision that we often talk about on the show are a good example of that. It's become very clear that, like WWE in the 2010s, AEW is producing content. That's what it is. It's content, but there is no greater meaning past that with anything that's going on in the company outside.
You said it a lot on the Weekend Show, a lot though. Like, why would they care about in-seat? When you were talking about wrestlers, matches, angles, you said that line so many times listening back.
Wheeler Youth is conflicted. Why would they care? Jay White's a babyface. Why would they care? Hook and Christian are having a feud. Why would they care?
Kip Sabian? What's going on?
Better example. Kip Sabian's a good one. I'll let JP go on that. Tomohiro Ishii is the best example.
It's fair, honestly.
Tony Khan has just decided he's now going to be Chris Jericho's number one contender, and everyone will pop because it's Tomohiro Ishii from the G1s in the 2010s, and it's like, he hasn't won a match in AEW. Like, he's not a threat. He's a little old man who has pretty good matches on telly when he's on there that people aren't invested in, and it's that expectation that he's going to walk out to a pop, and it is, that speaks to, and we've been saying it from the start, JP, with AEW, it speaks to that EWR game aesthetic with AEW, whereas when I'm booking on EWR, there's no real crowd that I have to care about whether they're actually really going to react or not. Tony Khan still books like that. Like, in his head, that's a great bit, that's a great spot, and then we move on to the next week. But in reality, nobody is connected to that for all of the reasons we mentioned.
You've kind of hit and this is the thing about when this is a much more difficult conversation as opposed to the WWE one, because there's clearly stuff that's going right, but it feels like a lot of the chickens have come home to roost. We've got the creative aspect that you're talking about there, about why would we care about these, about the disjointed nature of the show, about how rushed it is. There's a reason why people don't flock to films or TV programs that are made by, like, sort of loads of different directors, because they all have a different tone and they all have a different vision, and you need a uniformity of vision when it comes to a TV show. I think that's a big thing. They've forgotten they're making a TV show at times, and that what television is like is, television these days is great. It's great. You are spoiled for fucking choice. I've been saying it's been the golden age of TV for a good, like, 20 years at this stage. But it's almost like a lot of the times wrestling has forgotten that actually audiences have gotten smarter as well. And so when you've got all of these different writers, there isn't that. And this is where, you know, you could talk about this so much. I almost want to get into this, like, because there's too many wrestlers, there's too many writers. It's too week to week, and it's panicked. There's too much of an influence from WWE, which then builds into the brand identity side of it. I listen to, and again, always like bigging them up for Sidgwick and Michael Hamflett, Mickey Hamflett, as I like to call him, talking about like the Moxley angle, and they're trying to fix it. And they're talking about how to try and fix it. And you just realise the amount of names they're going through, and you go, well, why is this person there? And we are past the point of, oh, but they're a nice bloke and they've got a family. It's like, yeah, so do I. Does that mean I should be fucking hired? Christ, I've got more mouths to feed than some of those lads. I'd imagine 99% of the roster. And these are the things. It's like, from a business perspective, it's like, why isn't there like thought about the venues that they're going to be running? The aesthetic of it. For me, there's just too much of an influence from somewhere else. They've hit that kind of, I'm not saying it's not a panic mode, but you can see how companies do it, because TNA would do it at various points. They think, no, we're different to WWE. And they'd be like, no, we need to do what they're doing because they're successful. And the problem is then you come across as WWE light. So you've got all of these things. And I was thinking of ways, well, there are ways that you could rescue this Moxley storyline. The problem is this is like turning around like an oil tanker in the middle of the ocean. It's a slow, cumbersome process. It's not easy to do. And there'll be points along the way where you think, oh, no. But that would be something you'd have if you've got a And we're not talking about just a year's worth of plans. We're talking 3 to 4 years, because guess what? You've got some of these guys under contract for that length of time. But you've got them effectively, it is like a series of squirrels running around the place. You go, squirrel. Ishii, we're going to focus on Kip Sabian now. And you're just like, well, will you fucking calm down? And you need no more for like AEW. I swear to you at this point, that 40 at an absolute push, 50 wrestlers. That means a firing 100 wrestlers. Good.
Do John Silver?
They don't need them. There's other wrestling companies they can go to.
Johnny Hungry. I'm going to try and dig the record for a word counter to that. But no, my point is with the, sorry, I need to say this while it's in my mind or I'll forget, Ben, sorry. Even this big angle, right, where it started, and now I don't watch every segment every week, so if anyone in the chat or yourselves point where I'm wrong, tell me straight away. So they, like, Moxley himself has took out his best friend who he's been running with for years. That's good, right? So why are all these, like baby faces, like, you know, your Darby Allins, your Orange Cassidys? Wasn't Daniel Bryan a part of that same group that were beating the shit out of all them at a point? Sorry, Bryan Danielson, that were beating the shit. Why are they meant to care now? Because it was that heinous. Is that? I'm guessing that's what it is, because he took it so far. But it's like, wasn't he? But that speaks to like the Blackpool Combat Club, where they were faces 1 week, heels 1 week. That you guys have said. Are we meant to think that, like, what? What's that?
Didn't Jey Uso try to kill Jimmy over the sanctity of the Ulafala? I mean,
he didn't try to kill him. He didn't try to. You know what I mean? He had, and they're brothers though, Benno. So why is Orange Cassidy?
Black was magic like the Ulafala, and that's what it is.
No, you know, but it wasn't meant to be a serious company.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
But yeah.
You're picking plot holes in that. You can pick anything in this. What is what I'm saying?
I don't think it's plot holes there are the problem. It's more emphasis to the problem. Like Bryan, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, just retired, and we didn't talk about it again after the show. We've moved on to a different aspect of this Blackpool Combat Club story. We've moved on to it being them versus the roster, rather than it being about Bryan. I think that's, rather than it being a logic gap, it's more just a lack of focus and about making things important, to your point, JP, and making that Bryan loss and that Bryan incident resonate rather than moving on to a different part of that story.
I was thinking about it because I started making some notes on the way to the show yesterday, and the Arsenal game hadn't kicked off against Liverpool. So I thought, I'm going to make some notes on this stuff, like fresh in the mind. It was like, how do you turn this storyline? I don't want to go into kind of necessarily a whole load of fantasy booking for it as well, but it feels like this is meant to be, in theory, a big overarching storyline that involves everyone. And effectively, I thought, well, really what you're going for are the two Avengers films, Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. And in the middle of this, you have like what is effectively like the death of Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, I should say. Yeah. And that should be a cloud that kind of looms over a lot of the wrestlers for a few weeks, as these guys are starting to run roughshod of thinking, actually, I need to stand up for this. But you give people motivations, you take time. That's when you use your programs like your Collisions and your Rampage, that you have offshoots of this storyline, the effects on these wrestlers and how that then affects them there. But it's all part of a bigger, holistic kind of story. We don't get that with AEW. We get that with very, like, these fucking scrubs behind me on the screen. But you don't get that, like we point out, with a Jericho, with an MJF, with an Adam Cole. They're completely unaffected by any of this stuff. And it's like, well, then the storyline doesn't work. Because effectively, Jon Moxley should be Thanos. The whole idea is he's for the greater good of the company. He is going to take out loads and loads of shit. And it sounds particularly brutal, but you can do that. And you can have this person kind of before effectively all of these disparate figures who don't quite get on decide to unite for the greater good to save the company. And they're not thinking of it in that way. Now, that's a storyline that should last like 3 years. And guess what? Some people will be coming to the end of their contract. Then you write them out. That's what you do. And you give it a greater meaning. Evil Uno's contract's up. So he has the ever-loving shit beaten out of him. And he's gone. And you go, oh, fuck. They've just written this guy out. And you go, yeah. Because we've reached the end of the creative tale of that. And we might find that we can bring him back in, you know, unless the Canadian indies are getting incredibly hot at that point in time. But they're the things where, if you think about, like, and this is where I always go to the point about, I'm not thinking about like a TV program. Most great TV programs, you talk about The Sopranos, what is the big overarching storyline? Effectively, you've got this New Jersey mob who are kind of like, you've got the like other families that he's feuding with as well. You've got his real life drama with stuff going on at home, and the shadow of the FBI over the top of all of this stuff. Game of Thrones, you had Westeros and all these kind of feuding figures, but you had the White Walkers as this overall like kind of impending threat and impending doom. The Wire had that. We had all these different facets of Baltimore life, but effectively you had like the dealers and the police, and it was like these kind of bigger things at stake, and these characters were involved on low levels and differing levels throughout that, and you could have them kind of like uniting. But it doesn't appear to be that AEW can think of it this way, because they still kind of like, they're not embracing the idea of like, long term is not 6 months. Long term goes into years, and that's what this should be. And you can't just position wrestler A into this and we're going to push him for a few weeks, because that's not long. That's just band-aids and hoping shit works. You're just throwing stuff up against the wall and you're seeing really what sticks. And that's the problem with this is that they cannot think of this stuff. And that's why you have too many writers in the room. And I come back to it. It's like I bore myself with this point. I say this all the time on the weekend show. Infrastructure. How is it organized? Now, there's some moves from a business perspective, as we'll get onto it, that they're kind of getting sorted out. But from a creative perspective, they haven't. And if people aren't good enough, then to say, I'm sorry, yeah, it's just not working out, and you let them go. And you ignore anybody who bleats, well, what about their family? It's like, yes, there are other jobs outside of being a writer for a wrestling TV show. Like, you know, I think that's what, there needs to be an element of quite like brutality, but structure to the organisation, which then would add the structure to the TV, proper structure.
But Benno, to ask you a question, what JP just said, will he see this angle out? Like, do you think he's got a plan to it, like a genuine one, or do you think he's going to like?
Yeah, and I think
flip flop it around.
I mean, I just don't fundamentally don't think the story's interesting. You put as many bells on.
You're not into it. Moxley's good though, isn't he? But that's what I mean, Ben.
6 years. Just not interesting.
No,
it's another company takeover. It's a story with the world's greyest stable at the heart of it. To your point before about like, you know, Brian and the fucking, you know, tweener group that stable was over time, now having to invest in that being the majority story in the company. I just think it's a busted flush from the start, really. And I don't think there's anything they can do to make me invested in it. But they definitely think they are doing it. They think they're elevating Darby. They think they're elevating Orange Cassidy. They think they're elevating Private Party, whoever it is. But to kind of look at what JP said there, like, they didn't put the work in before this. It was just, okay, now we're doing this story. Who can we make? And they picked the guys. They haven't long-term moved up. It goes to kind of the structure of the roster problem that we've always banged on about, things since day one, Gareth. Like, there isn't a roster that you climb up. We haven't seen Darby Allin climb up. It's just random. Now Darby Allin's going to win the world title. Or now Orange Cassidy's going to be a top guy. And they'll put a few weeks of build into that, but like the build should have happened before this. The build should have happened in other places. They do it all the time. People turn up on TV and get title shots, when in a more organised, structured company, they would have had 6 weeks worth of wins before they were plopped in that position, because Tony Khan just saw them in the toy box and was like, Kyle O'Reilly, you're my number one contender this week. It's that's the bigger problem for me. But like, this story goes, like, I don't even find it interesting to talk about anymore. I just don't think it sums up the promotion, the colour of it. Like, it is just boring, I would say, God.
100% agree, and like, and it's the follow through on things like that as well. Is like, I can picture it now: Darby Allin beating Jon Moxley for the belt, and in the moment, that being a good moment that ends a pay per view, that we watch a pay per view and we're like, yeah, and then the next week on Dynamite or 2 weeks later, it's almost just like there's no next kind of thing, and it's just, oh, now he's just randomly having a match against fucking Roddy Strong this week or something, like, you know what I mean? There'll be no...
Chris Statlander lost to Willow Nightingale, and then Chris Statlander's the babyface challenger. Like, that's the best example of that, isn't it? Like, surely if you had that plan, you'd go the other way. Like, obviously, like, yeah.
There's no follow through, and common to sort of like the bigger points as well that we were like talking about, just to draw that like comparison with WWE, while I wouldn't necessarily describe it as cool, it is hot kind of thing. It's something that's pulling people into it. Like, AEW is as cold as ice, and then you turn on the TV show and it looks as cold as ice. And then if you're in a world where your TV audience has gone from, say, 800,000 to 600,000, so you've lost 25% of your TV audience, then the hand-in-hand thing with that is then you're going to lose 25% of your live audience as well, probably more, kind of thing, because they're dragging someone along with them and things. So lo and behold, these like arena attendances aren't going to be getting like any better either. And fundamentally, like we've seen with WCW, you can't just draw a line in the sand and do, here's the great reset kind of thing. Like, yesterday we were this, now we're this kind of thing, and tear everything up and start again. It doesn't work. You can't do that. It has to be something that becomes organic. WWE turned itself around in an organic way that, from the TV ratings dropping year after year after year to then been something where businesses has now turned, it's back to the point JP said it previously about turning the oil tanker in the sea. That's the world that they're in. But, then that's where, again, to JP's point, this is where the long-term planning has to come in, and this is where they have to take this step back and go creatively, what do we want to do from like a storyline perspective to get from there to there? Who are our guys? Who are fresh? Who are new? Who are the people that the audience want to see? Who can we make that's going to, like, people are actually going to give a shit about here, and put them at the forefront? But then you have to take that step back as well and go, well, where do we run our shows? Like, what does the arena look like? What's the aesthetic? Like, what is the way we present ourselves generally? Are we the alternative product? In which case, do we need to look completely different to WWE and present ourselves massively as like, for a different crowd, a different type of person and things, right? We have to visually present ourselves in that way. But then how does that go down with the TV deal that they've just signed based on what they have been presenting and the look and feel of that? For argument's sake, if it suddenly became this smaller, grungier looking product on TV that might look a bit cooler and look a bit alternative and look a bit left field, are they going to be turning around going, hang about, we haven't paid you all this money for this? Like, we wanted that kind of thing, which is, with the nice flashy light graphics and things like that as well. So there's just this whole need to think, here's our plan of where we need to get to. But it's not just the product, it's not just the wrestlers, it's the presentation, and then everything else that ties in around that. It's that marketing, it's that like external narrative. It's like it's doing things properly and professionally, and the way you go about promoting your live events through to telling people what's coming on TV versus what's happening on this pay-per-view. They've fundamentally got a problem in all aspects of their business, from in-ring to creative to the business side as well. The only positive they've going is that for whatever reason they've had all that money thrown at them for a 3-year period, which gives them a buffer. And my worry is the fact that they've got that money is that gives them that almost like element of lack of urgency to do something kind of thing. We've got like that money's there. Like, oh, it's fine. All you keep hearing is, oh, it's fine. They've got the TV deal. Well, that's not good enough. Cash. I don't want to watch cash in Tony Khan's bank account. I want to watch a wrestling product that feels like it's for me. And if I'm not getting that with AEW and I'm not getting that at WWE, where does that leave me as a wrestling fan? like these days, like it's like. It's bizarre, it's a funny situation to find yourself in.
I need to make this point, well, once again, sorry, because it's in my mind, guy. And to be fair, you're saying can it be turned around? But when you look at it seriously now, I know there's too many wrestlers and we could cut 100. We literally could sit here and cut 100 guys.
Bloody should do.
I keep thinking about, what is it? The opposite to WCW, where they had the big stars, but they just don't want to wrestle, did they? Now, they've got stars to a certain degree, of course they have, but they've got some of the best wrestlers in the world. If you listed their top 30 wrestlers or a core of 30 people you could build a TV around, even I'm saying, fucking hell, if someone could make that, they could make that compelling. You've got Swerve, Hangman, Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega when he comes back, Young Bucks, veterans like Edge who can still have a go, who's got name value, or like Jericho is finished, but if he was an on-screen kind or whatever. No, but you know what I'm saying? Christian J. White, there's FTR, there's women, there's Mercedes Moné, you know, day ones like Orange Cassidy, Darby Allin, who they have done, MJF, Adam Cole. There's 20 off the top of my head that you could literally build something around. So it is the case of he's not doing it properly, and there's too many people. There's just far too many.
Problem is, though, is made me not care about 75% of those.
But it shouldn't be the case, should it? That shouldn't be the case.
And I should care about 75% of them. So some of them names there, I'm like, yeah, they were perceived to be big stars.
Didn't say much.
Or they're stars to a certain level. What on earth could they do to get me interested in some of them people now? Some of them, like, you almost feel like you're at the stage where you've just got to prioritize. And I think new and fresh near the top is probably the way they need to go, and like create actual stars of their own. So as opposed to leaning on some and using those guys there who have an element of star quality to be put in this next level through, and try and like almost make you care about people who haven't got the stink of the last 2.5-3 years on them. But again, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do
Gareth,
that.
It's the opposite again.
I think those people exist, to your point, Matty, in that, like, it just feels like, because the counter to what we're saying is somebody who will have watched Dynamite this week and gone, see, they're pushing Private Party, see, they're setting Orange Cassidy up, see, Babyface Jay White, all of, like, you can point to and go, there's new things, but, like, the parts are there, as Matty said. You've got, like, we've said it, like, we've said it for pretty much this year. This company should be built around Swerve Strickland, who is doing the most interesting thing in the company right now. Unbelievably, it's to do with Shelton Benjamin and Lashley, but, like, that is a positive. It's Hangman Page and it's Will Ospreay, but you have to plug those people, because I think they're not damaged. Hangman to an extent, but not that much. It's not just randomly plucking someone who's not going to be your top guy. Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin, as much as I love them, I'm not sure they're going to be top guys in AEW. They might be upper mid-card guys. Maybe with a bit of TLC they could be. But guys who can be are those three we listed. And what are they all doing outside of Swerve? Not very interesting stuff. And that's, to your point, Matty, the pieces are there. You could do something interesting with it. You could. But instead, it's what this product is right now. Even Moxie, I said before, I should say, for anyone who doesn't listen to Weekend Show, as negative as I am on that story, doesn't mean I'm negative on his performances. He is a fantastic actor, playing an unbelievable role in a film that's written badly. Like, in a big film that's got behind JP there, a gang of geeks who are like somehow the main, people were supposed to be rooting for in this story, which is obviously fundamentally broken. But you could do something with Mox, I suppose.
And I haven't been a Mox guy. Like, it's a shame the bell still got a ring. But for me, I'm invested in him now, even in matches, because of this character. And that speaks to our fandoms of how we see wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see him fight now because of this character and the promos. He's like, oh yeah, I'm invested in him now. I genuinely am. He's been unbelievable. Like, honestly, them videos he cuts in the desert and stuff, they're fucking brilliant. But as you say, it's just plugged in with this this crew behind JP. It's like, honestly, lads, that was just that visual. It can't be undersold, though. This is why it's been the discourse about it, because it is so bad.
Karen Angle.
Gareth. Just there. I mean, these are the like. There's a couple of really simple things as well. It's like, if you're doing shit crowds in the States, wacky idea. Why don't you do a tour of Europe? Crazy. Why the fuck does that not ever? It's no, we can only go there once a year. Why? Who says this? Why can't that happen? TNA learned that lesson at their worst ebbs. It's like, oh shit, we're not doing anything over here. We'll go over to the UK for a bit. They're starved of this stuff. We'll get some hot crowds, and then maybe that will then reflect through to the TV product. Nah, not gonna do that at all. Also, and this is another question, like, are we hitting the limits of like actually really great wrestling? And there is still loads and loads of great wrestling that happens on TV. Have we hit the limit of what that can actually do? That it's like, well, yeah, that will get you so far. It'll earn you a certain amount of goodwill, but even then, that core
That
AEW
ties
base.
into
Like,
the
you've had
question,
great mates on
JP.
TV, and they're like, wow, they're shrugging their shoulders almost. And do you know what? I kind of feel like that. It's like, yeah, this is a good match, but I kind of want more than this, and you're not giving me the more than.
But it's good matches, not great matches, isn't it? And it's good matches without stakes, and it's Ricochet going out with Nick Wayne on Rampage, which is good for the sickos. But like, yeah, there is
Seen it all before,
amount of it. But I think you can make, because that goes to the point of like, how can they be different than WWE? Like, for all our different takes on WWE, and there's clearly a smorgasbord across here. Like, they are doing WWE style wrestling well. AEW is doing WWE style stuff, which is the interference and the nonsense, badly. Like, they should be doing AEW stuff well. And I do think good matches is part of like the AEW thing. I think presented better than it is now, there's a higher ceiling than what they're doing now. But there have to be a lot of the fundamental changes that Gareth talks about, I don't think it's necessarily a bad USP.
And it's part of the thing though as well is matches. That is a fundamental part of what AEW was about. But you're totally right. It's the stakes going into them and caring about them, and that means storylines. But you don't have to have your storylines go like as radically left field as some of them have. Just give me a reason to care about why these two people are having a match and tell a story within the match. And this is where AEW stuff feels like it should and could be. It's number one contender stuff. It's client. Like, if I beat him, I'm getting a title shot for this title that feels important. This title that feels important. Why does it feel important? Oh, because I'm a young guy who's on the up, and I'm trying to win this mid-card title to establish myself. Yeah, it's the one belt that I like, because I'm not ready for the world title yet, because I'm younger kind of in the business, putting them stepping stones in place to make, it's bringing back, as we've talked a million times before, the purpose in them belts, fewer belts, having that clear ladder that people can go for. That's what a more wrestling sports product should be built around. And then you can have that one storyline in there that is a blood feud, that's there's some conflict between them that's not about a belt or something, or isn't about climbing the roster and getting to the next level and things. It almost needs just like kind of like step back and simplification, but again, in order to get to that simplification, it feels like there's too many steps to get there to just do it quickly, kind of like.
Is Swerve and Hangman then, since like Punk and that left, is that the only feud that's combined the two of like great matches but having that story and that personal that you can think of? Because we always go back to that though, don't we? We always go back to that feud being the thing.
You've had a few examples of it, often involving Hangman, sometimes involving Moxley, often involving Swerve. You could be the company that has that going on at the same time as, and the best example of what you're talking about, Gareth, the Continental Classic. Like, that was a question we got in the Discord from you, and it was, can a match be good if it has no storyline? Yes, look at every G1. Depends what you mean by storyline, because winning the G1 is a storyline.
That's a part of the tournament, isn't it?
Yeah. Winning and losing in the Continental Classic, again, with the caveat of the Continental Classic meaning something and not being diluted by there being a silly belt that a card is running around with, and actually being an important thing that happens that we actually know is coming. We don't even know it's coming. It's not even like it's on the diary. There are a load of ways you can make it, more important. But in theory, that was a good idea last year. We were having these similar conversations in a similar part of the year last year, and the Continental Classic turned a lot of us around, because it was like, oh, this is a different type of storytelling than what WWE is doing, and oh my god, what a layup, let's do that. And we were all positive for a while. Like, that can exist in a company, and you can have your blood feuds going on. That could still be wrestling and not the Disney Channel wrestling that WWE is doing.
And they told stories, didn't they? Garcia had a story in the way that he was like losing matches and things like built into it. It was a mechanism that, as I mentioned last time I was on the show, Brody Lee got over with the crowd because there was that story there of him and almost like his wrestling style, having these like different type of matches that within that tournament there was things that they were able to tell there, and things like that just give you that a bit like how many the good G1s. Like, oh, this guy's the spoiler kind of thing. He's out of the tournament, but he can cost this guy the chance to be in the final. Like, What better reason for a match to be happening than that? That's all you need. Like, or this guy, he won one match last year, or he didn't win a match last year. He's won a match this year, or he's won 2 matches this year, or he's on a streak, or he's lost his fucking hell. Like, this big name's lost his first 2 matches in the tournament. Such easy shit, basic stories. It doesn't need to be someone setting someone else on fire or anything like that. It doesn't need this 27 people sat around a writer's room writing dialogue and things like that. You know, it's just like basic things that you can kind of grip hold of and like invest in. And surprise, surprise, AEW was probably better when it did have rankings, and there was slightly, fewer belts, and matches did seem to have a purpose,
I think these problems with AEW come back to when it was the introduction of a lot of these belts, because that ended up like it just muddied the waters so much. It was ridiculous. As we said about the Continental Classics, that was a tournament, and you had a tournament winner, and that person is the winner of that tournament until the next tournament happens for it. But instead, it was like, what were they doing for such a long period of time? It was number one contenders matches, tournaments, battle royals, and it was lazy stuff. And I think like the rankings,
he didn't want to beat stars, JP, in his mind. No. That's why he created these belts, so they could all have. All these people he wanted to push couldn't lose to each other, so they could all have a belt. Because even in them tournaments, it went as if it was the best for the best. How many times did we all come on here going, why is he in this tournament? Why is he in the semi-finals of this tournament? You know who's going to win these matches. He kept his big stars apart from the start. He did, and now it's catching up with him.
He's doing 100%. Less of that now, but
because he can't. Because he's got to do it now, Benno. You know what I mean?
I mean, to kind of circle back around to like, and I think based on what we've said there, we kind of know the answer. Like, a big question people are asking, it came up a couple of times when I was putting together the subjects for this. Can AEW, we can talk all that talk, but can AEW actually coexist with WWE while it's this hot? While, WWE is saving a lot of masters and saving a lot of people there. You often see people say it. Paul said it on our Discord today. Did people actually want an alternative to WWE, or did they just want WWE to be good? Maybe that describes some people. Maybe it doesn't describe everybody. And Big Lannister said in the Discord as well, and he meant more the wrestling world. Can other companies coexist with a hot WWE? Is that when the industry leader is all that maybe some people want? Is there then the space that was carved through WWE being shit for the majority of 2 decades, that carved the space for New Japan, that carved the space for AEW to exist? Is it fundamentally not possible for AEW to be what it is with WWE there? No matter if we're right about everything we're saying today, and AEW took everything we said on board and fixed all those things, Gareth, would that actually matter in this environment? Is their ceiling lower now because of WWE's resurgence, whatever we think of it or not? I think a lot of people feel like that, and a lot of people feel like there are wrestling fans out there who maybe talk the talk about wanting an alternative and wanting an AEW, but didn't actually want it. They just wanted their SmackDown and Raw to be passable.
You see, my gut feel is there's this audience that were watching WWE by almost hostage because it was the only game in town, kind of thing. I'm a wrestling fan. I want to watch wrestling, so I'll keep watching it in the hope that it gets good. I think we're probably all part of that. We're still watching it because it was wrestling. You want an alternative that you can that will be better. So New Japan became more accessible, indies got better and things like that. So that's when, I don't actually need to watch WWE anymore. I can watch this. AEW comes along. Great. We can, that's gone. So I think there's this chunk of the audience that just went that way completely. Now there's probably 10% of them who've gone back that way towards WWE. But I think WWE has been effective in growing a new base of people who were 8, 9, 10, who are now 18, 19, 20 kind of thing, who've come through, and this is something that they can latch on. I think AEW's problem is that they've maybe 10% of them have gone back that way. I think the people there who were taking over Raw shows, taking over WWE shows, moaning about the booking in arenas and things like that, who no longer do that, they came over to this AEW side. Some of them are just gone. Some of these people have just gone well, I wanted this alternative. Like, that's not for me. This was the Great White Hope kind of thing of what I wanted for me from wrestling. Like, oh, it's not that. Like, I'm going to watch good telly instead. Kind of like I'm a wrestling fan. I'm just not going to watch wrestling anymore. And that's like I think that's the predominant audience that AEW have lost to me. They're just people who've probably just filtered out, and they might watch the odd pay-per-view just to dip the toe in, like occasionally, or things. They might go to their local indie show or something, but they're probably just sort of like semi lost. And WWE just feels like it's just been built on a new audience as opposed to converting jaded fans back to it. I think it's predominantly the way. Which, to the original question, can AEW coexist? Yeah. If it's good, if it's got its own clear identity, if it's producing good wrestling with like good narrative around it, that's, that is a compelling product that you want to tune in to every week. Of course they can. 1 million people were watching it 2.5 years ago. Like, those people can be turned back on if they hear, oh, this is good, or they happen to, watch pay-per-view and, oh, this looks joined up kind of thing. This looks like it's given me a reason to turn Dynamite on the next week, or it looks like they've built my trust back here that this is a product that can invest in. So I think it can exist. I don't think it can come. I don't think it can happen or exist as long as Tony Khan's got control of the creative that happens within AEW. He's just not good enough. He's not good enough. And until that is handed over to somebody who is good enough, who's given that free,
the right person,
creative license, it can't just be anyone. But who's good? Who is there out there who can pick?
I was going to say that. Who's left? All these relics. You can't give it to a relic anymore. Who's these new, fresh, like bookers? You're taking a complete chance on someone completely new, aren't you?
And that was one of his big fuck ups, particularly when it came to, say, a Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor should have been like a testing ground for just new bookers and new ideas. God's sakes, even Rampage and Collision could have been, and Collision was to a certain degree when it first started off.
And that's a shout, isn't it? What, someone like that, give him a go.
You can't be any left to the road agents who just book themselves, so that's bad delegation. There's good and bad delegation. I always find this question hard to answer, and I think, well, how would we don't. It's a workplace at the end of the day, and we don't work there, and we don't know who's good and bad. We know who's got a good wrestling mind, and we know possibly who's got a bad wrestling mind. But like, would we know if the next? Just pull an example, Gabe Sapolsky, not current Gabe Sapolsky, but a young version of him probably exists somewhere. He's got a good brain. Like, your Gary's a great booker, Matty. You've got great for GCW. Like, Tony Khan doesn't know he exists. I'm sure that the job's a bit big for him. He's got other things going on. But there could be equivalents of him somewhere else. There could be people we just don't know, isn't it? That's the job, though, of a good... To what you're saying there, Gareth, I don't necessarily... I think I agree. I think Tony Khan doesn't get enough credit for some of the good AEW's got, gets a lot of blame for the bad of AEW, and should get pretty much all of the blame for the bad of AEW now from a creative point of view. But I think his biggest weakness is as a people manager, as a man manager. We've seen it time and time again, as just manager in that locker room of egos, of managing, Chris Jericho getting his TV time and Moxley getting to do what he wants and making his little jobber mates, in the Dark Order happy, and all of the things you see with Britt Baker and MJF getting to do whatever the fuck he wants on telly. Like, he kind of needs to be taken out of that role more than he almost does the creative, although there's the creative weakness too. Like, that's never going to go away, is it? AEW is always going to be what it is because Tony Khan is always going to be who he is when it comes to being a manager.
But that ties in, Benno, to the WWE at the start, where like, how many wrestlers did you hear? I can't go up to like whoever and say I want to do this. So Tony Khan used that as like, right, come to AEW, you can do what you want. And I'll use Monet in this. Maybe there's some wrestlers who can't go out there and cut a promo. Maybe there's wrestlers who do need bullet points, who do need scripts. That's not a bad thing all the time. Some wrestlers rely on that. And as you said, I've said this for years, and obviously Brawl Out's the obvious one that broke the camel's back. The inmates run the asylum. They have done for fucking so long. And he'll never be able to change though, Benno. He can't put his iron fist down now. That'll never, ever change. There's no chance. Unless he brings someone in who'll be a bit more stricter. But then they'll probably go above them to Tony Khan. That's where you'll end up having all this forever. That'll never change that side of it.
I went to your Gary Matty. Ramen says here, Andy Q. That's a better shout. Someone like that, who does exist. We know has got a good wrestling brain. I'm sure has a load of opinions about, wrestling on TV. We hear that on his podcast. There'll be either him or equivalents to him that we don't know the name of, but it's not our job to know their name.
There's a football analogy though. Is it like a lower manager getting like a top 4 Prem job? That's what it'd be like though, wouldn't it? But they're not going to get it. It'd have to be someone. And as I say, all these old relics are gone now. They're all stained. They're all done. It needs to be someone different.
NXT? Who was the bloke who peaked here at NXT? Got all of the credit rather than Triple H. What was his name?
Who was it?
Oh, I remember him.
It's rare, isn't it? You write his name and remember it, or you remember Dave Lagana. You know what I mean? Like there's various names you remember. He was one you remember. There might be not that he was fucking the dog's bollocks. I think a lot of that was
what you're saying, though, Ben.
Takeovers, but there might be equivalents of him somewhere. Who's even better.
He also relies on a hatchet man. And who did he appoint as his kind of hatchet man of sorts? It was Tony Schiavone, and that's not.
Brian Danielson was fine and restless for treating, wasn't he? He was the locker room leader for a bit. He's gone round the block so many times. The stories you hear anyway. As you say, Jake, there needs to be someone to put the fist down when someone misbehaves. Something needs to happen.
But then at times it's that problem of the insulation he lives in away from this criticism. He doesn't need to have this, and this comes back to the earlier point you brought up, Benno, where the size of that TV deal is the thing that you do fear. They view it as insulation away from any criticism. Well, we're doing something right because we got this deal, and it's 3 years in TV is not a long time. And as we see, it's a landscape that's consistently changing. And I know I don't want to do like the sky is falling about the TV deal already, but there is a finite amount of time they have in order to turn things around. Before Warner Brothers Discovery go, we've paid a lot of fucking money for this. Do we want that 4th year? And as soon as they don't have that 4th year, if we're 18 months into that, you're like, Jesus, you've got to shop around and get something that's a similar size to this. How are you going to do that? Who's going to look at that? And what metrics are they going to look at for making that decision? They're going to look, 600,000 a week, and you want 200 million a year? Fuck off.
Like, the average on telly by that point might be 400,000, And Tony Khan I'm not worried about that side of things because Tony Khan can pay for it. He can buy telly time. AEW will exist, whether it's profitable.
It'll always it'll exist for years and years and years. There's no, that's not even in my mind. That it's just how bad will it get while it's still here. You know what I mean? Or who will be there, kind of thing. But
what do we think about going forward? Like you've got on here, JP, obviously. They all the positive signs if we talk going forward. You pointed that out on Weekend Show this week, JP. They are promoting unbelievable. I know it's fucking small victories. They're promoting live events. They're promoting matches ahead of time. It's not just Excalibur going through run sheets at the end of the show. It might only last 3 weeks, like when the last time they brought the rankings back. But there are some signs that they are recognising maybe creatively we're not seeing it, and in other ways we're not seeing it. But I think there's a couple of signs there that there's a recognition of shit. We need to do something about these houses. Shit, this isn't looking good on telly. It does need to look better. So I think there's some positive to say there. There's at least a recognising of those issues.
That definitely was one of the big positives. Is the fact that they're promoting their shows outside of Tony Khan's Twitter feed. Like that was a almost like one of the easiest things they could have done. I appreciated the fact that they had video packages explaining last week on AEW Dynamite.
Got to be done.
It's not that tricky to do. You've got a big production crew, and you should be filling this in because the idea is you're going to get people back. They're going to need to get clued up with what's going on. That's the way you do it. Is you do this previously. It's like, oh my God, what is this going on? I might have to have a watch of this. It's not tricky. The fact we're saying this in like year 5 is much more of like that kind of worrying point. I get that they weren't able to do it from day one, but at this stage, I suppose you thank heavens for small mercies that they're doing that, but they have to stick with that. That has to become a permanent part of it. I also think as well, and you brought this up when you were talking about SmackDown, talking about like show long storylines. That's still not a thing that they're like quite hesitant to doing. And it's just like, well, you need we see the way a lot of these ratings will go. It'd be a Big Bang Theory, lower rating, we've got the opener, and it's just like, oh, that's the end of that bit. And then we end up with this permanent segmentation of the show. And they need to move away from that. That format stuff is done. Yeah.
That was a thing I thought a positive, though, about Dynamite, because I'm a big, and it's a small thing, like you're saying. It's a small thing on Dynamite. But every wrestling show should open with a cold open for me, not like these real shows like Sopranos or like just cut a scene before it actually starts. And with the Moxley stuff, I like that thing of where he was in the desert saying, by the end of tonight, another victim's going to fall. That's a little hook to keep you staying in. I like that. You should do all that.
The way they delivered it, though. That was
you true, fair play, but at least I love that side of it. It's like, right, people should tune in to see what they do tonight now. I'm giving top praise for that because that was good.
They are still hesitant to do that on the reg, though.
Yeah,
that's still very much the exception of the TV and not the rule.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, like, that's AEW, that's WWE. We can talk about the future and where we kind of see everybody kind of landing, but like to link it into a question on the Discord, Mark Buckley asked, like, is our wrestling interest level at a point where they get more enjoyment out of old wrestling than we do current? I mean, I'd broaden that question and just say, like, what is our current interest level? The answer would always be, and this is like a Twitter talking point, isn't it? Oh, you think that's bad? Well, there's wrestling of all flavours around the world. You can find something for you. Like, what is out there outside of that? You know, New Japan. We've got on here, you know, will New Japan get good again? I'm not sure it ever will, based on what we reviewed last week with New Japan, and I don't think the interest is necessarily there in New Japan based on our show last week. Is TNA exists, you know, as a feeder, essentially. There's pros.
It'll always exist, TNA.
MLW is another one. It will always exist. It will always be there. You know, what will it ever be? Like, what does the out of, you know, make the two mainstream, you know, Western promotions and moving into, like, New Japan and everything else out there? Like, is there stuff out there that's gonna keep us interested? Because I would say, like, interest levels in AEW are at the floor right now. You know, WWE, I can take or leave depending on the show, depending on the week, but it's certainly interesting to cover right now, as far as, like, their resurgence. But, like, yeah. So I'll start with the question, like, interest-wise, Gareth, like, yeah, you get more out of? I think that's the answer. You are getting more out of old wrestling. Download Retro. That's your
Portland, Gareth. Portland. Keep saying it every time you're on.
But yeah, we're gonna lean more on old stuff depending on what else is out there.
100%, like 100%. You know, like, you know, I've come on here. I've always had the thing of, oh yeah, I'll watch everything. I'll watch Collision. I'll watch Rampage. You know, I'll watch. I'm always, you know, I'd always make sure I caught up and stuff. I just don't care about like any of that anymore. It's just gone past. I'm sort of watching. I'm like, oh well, I'll watch Dynamite. There you go. There's 2 hours of AEW to kind of keep myself in touch with it. Does it matter that I haven't watched Collision or Rampage? No, kind of thing. Like, is it time I want to invest in my life? Like, no, sort of thing. There's, like, you know, I feel completely, like, turned away from it from that standpoint of, like, you know, give me a compelling reason to care. And they've got to, you know, I think I probably said this on the, you know, Grapple Lads the other night. If it wasn't for sort of coming on here and talking about it, would I be even watching Dynamite now? I probably wouldn't, to be honest. I'd be probably waiting to hear you say, "Oh yeah, Dynamite's got good," kind of thing. It's been it's been consistently good for 2 months, 3 months. I'll probably start dipping in and start watching again. And you know, so, like, outside of that, you know, it's like I feel like you're hanging on by a thread there. I'm never going to watch WWE consistently. There's nothing I read. You know, I always keep half an eye on, like, New Japan and things like that. Is there something here to pull me back in there? And doesn't seem like there's anything going on particularly there for me. I've started to watch. There's, like, on IWTV, Prestige Wrestling is an American indie that I've just watched a couple of shows of and quite enjoyed. So I'm just sort of working through watching all of their stuff. Just different people, new people. Doesn't necessarily, like, it's almost like low pressure, low expectations. You can still enjoy some wrestling. Some of it's going to be good, some of it's going to be shit, and that's kind of the world I probably find myself in a little bit. There is, yeah, just try and watch some things, see some new, different people who, you know, are out there, and then just watch old stuff, because there's so much good old stuff out there to go back and revisit. You know, the best, most enjoyable stuff that, from a podcasting point of view, that I've done in the last 2 years have been going back, filling the gap on Nigel McGuinness, going back, watching them, like, mixtapes that we've put together with, you know, Samoa Joe and things like that. You know, stepping into good time periods of different companies that you've not watched. So if I'm, instead of watching 3 hours watching Collision or Rampage next week, I'd rather, if that's 3 hours, if that's 3 hours I've got to watch some wrestling, it's probably going to be something old. It's probably going to be revisiting some matches that I like, revisiting a time period that I've not watched before, or a promotion that, like, I'm discovering, or a modern day promotion like an indie where I'm just looking to see some new lads, because there is some good stuff out there. And if it's one show you've got to watch a month, then great, that's consumable, isn't it? It's something you can keep on top of and enjoy as well. I almost feel like AEW is almost like actively forcing me away from watching their product at the minute, as opposed to trying to keep hold of it.
JP, is that going to go off? JBL turned up this weekend,
mate.
That,
I had it on Sunday morning when I was flat pack furniture on there, and it was doing very much for the first bit of the show, very much TNA things, which is generally decent matches with a higher than average X Division match and like a good Jordan Grace Masha Slamovich match. And then he got to the main event, and that crowd were willing Joe Hendry to win, and so they had Nick Nemeth win through JBL, and you're like,
just say that again.
What the fuck is this? Yeah,
I mean,
they have.
Shelton Benjamin had the best match on Dynamite. Fucking the most City Machine Guns or the most pushed on SmackDown. JBL is turning up to fucking Impact, and Bully Ray got the headlines at NXT show.
I know.
Like,
what's going on, Benno?
What a week.
It was depressing.
Yeah, and that's the thing, TNA could be something. They could lean into something.
If Joe Hendry's going to as well.
Yeah, and they're doing business-wise, they're doing good. I mean, if Joe Hendry, I don't like Joe Hendry, I don't enjoy Joe Hendry.
I don't, but he should have won.
But he's over. And even if he's fucking off to WWE in January, sod it, go with him now. It's a better message than going with, the old guard. And, like, no one's paying too much Dolph Ziggler. Like, just aren't. Like, he's never going to be anything other than being Dolph Ziggler, is he? Like, there's a 6.5 out of 10 that Dolph Ziggler is, from a draw and a wrestler and a promo. No, maybe not a promo, less than that. But all of those things, and it's never going to go up or down. He's just going to be who he is. So fuck it, go with that. Go. One of the positives from the show this weekend that I saw of it, seeing Vikingo, he's injured, unfortunately now, so there goes that positive. But like, he's someone that Impact have a little bit of a USP on, they can go on. Mike Santana, who's just a bit of a broken toy that you can do something with, and there was some positive signs there. But you're right, JP, you end the pay-per-view with Dolph Ziggler at standing tall and JBL taking out
the
Hardys.
I was going to say, JP, the fresh tag team won the tag team titles. You just ruined me joke there. The Hardys. What year is it? Honest to God. What year is it, lad?
But the point remains, they're not, they could be a thing. They could slot into a nice little place. We always talk about it. There could be a number 3, and it's probably not going to be MLW or Impact, but there could be a space there for somebody to occupy that space, and they're never going to be it, I don't think.
No, they're not. And I think the way that you just don't have the same level of faith in that kind of star creation element, because there's bits about TNA as a product and how they produce that you think this is actually, like, in terms of the commentary team, I've always got a lot of time for Hannifin and Raywalt. I think they're in the main, like, generally, like, very good at what they do, and even the way they present themselves at times is like better than AEW, which just shouldn't be the case. But it is just a feeder league for NXT. Look at the people from NXT they're getting in there. It's not their best and brightest, is it? It's like, is it Brindley Reese? And I'm like, what kind of a name is that for a star? Wendy Chu. It's like, I could give less of a shit about this stuff. And you're waiting really for TNA, that they serve more of a purpose, I think, for wrestlers to go, that's my best route into WWE. Is if I stand out in TNA, I am going to get noticed because they're actively watching this. And there's not going to be an issue with me turning up on TV if I'm under a TNA contract. It's, in some ways, for them, it's fine because they've been in much worse positions, in the past. But they are the epitome of content creation for a company that owns them. And they serve that purpose of just being able to just plonk on Impact and loads of other episodes on Access TV. Because when you see Access TV schedules, it seems to be absolutely chocker full of the stuff. It's like, my God, that's like hard work for it. So I think they could be, but this is a short run thing. This is the NXT involvement and WWE being hot at the moment. There is that minor knock-on effect where people are more willing to go along to shows. But I have to say, at the weekend, that was a crowd that was pretty hot, and they were utterly deflated by Joe Hendry not winning. They felt it, and it went into the next match. It went to the main event as well. They were just like, oh, fucking hell. Because it just felt, it's like they did the classic TNA thing. And that's the problem is you can't do, it's like WWE at least do fan service now. At least there's elements of that. We're not going to Cody and Roman, like, the two parts of that. But for the most part, they do fan service. And TNA didn't do that. And you get one chance at it. In the same way that AEW have had these options. When Orange Cassidy lost to Moxley in that main event of All Out and he was bloody, that was the moment you go with fucking Orange Cassidy.
That was so
and
good.
Instead, we're like 2 years down the road of now we're going to do it seriously. And you go, well, have you kind of missed your opportunity?
Yeah. I mean, TNA was one of the pay-per-views of the weekend, but at least you've always got NXT, lads. Matty, your favourite brand there, going from strength to strength, into Page and Bully Ray set up. Your
See, even for me,
Bully Ray, the sub for CM Punk.
That was
sure
just...
they initially wanted to do that spot.
Yeah, that's awful. But it's DCW show, isn't it? So at the time with that, he'll be in that tag match at DCW Arena show, surely, won't he? It's like, what are we doing? Like, that's what I mean. NXT for me is kind of like what JP said about TNA for years. You think you're getting ahead, and I know it's hot and it's doing whatever numbers-wise, but I look at it and watch it and I go, you're doing well, and then they'll always bring something in to bring it a bit back down, like this Bully Ray stuff and that, and like the characters like Obafemi for me. I know you've got to get, he's got to lose, but he shouldn't have lost to D'Angelo. He should have been champion for longer. Stuff like that, where it's like, all right, I know you've got to see how they lose and how they can affect it if you're testing the guy in real life.
Big show, mate. That's what.
For me, no, he should have been undefeated till he went to main roster, and then you've got a thread for him on the main roster. He's never been beaten, stuff like that. So, one step forward, 2 steps back at the minute NXT for me, Ben. So
again, that's one where it's like, obviously overall metrics have been up and it's appealing to that audience, but like if we think WWE is for children, Gareth, and
that is a disconnect, Benno. Even for me, that is a disconnect at times.
I think we're just too old and I'm never gonna get it. Like, I don't think NXT's ever gonna get you back, Gareth. Could New Japan ever pull you back? Did our review last week? Something told me about last week's show. We're in a world where I'm happy to say it, our Patreon's the strongest it's ever been. Last week was the least listened to spotlight we've ever done, because nobody gives a fuck about Royal Quest, and unfortunately, and no one gives a fuck about New Japan in 2024. That's what I'm telling myself was the reason for the number anyway. But it's just like we're probably talking foreign language to you, and you were watching, listening to us last week talking New Japan. Like, how long ago was it you were last invested in New Japan as an alternative option?
Christ, invested, like watching regularly. Like, God, yeah, you're going back like 3 years now, probably. I would say, but Zack Sabre Jr. as the champion hasn't pulled me back. If that ain't pulling me back, nothing's pulling me.
It's done, Gareth, if that's not.
But like pulling me back. It needs to be. You come back to that thing. It needs to be fresh. It needs to be new. It needs to be something that feels different. It needs to be like. I think an underrated part of wrestling is like discovery, or it is for me anyway, kind of thing, is discovering new people. Who's this guy kind of thing? Like, look him, just a bit of backstory. Where's he come from? And there is that almost like element to me with like New Japan, where you think, oh well, having a break from it, then a lot of these young boys are going to come through and hopefully competently booked and things. They're going to be technically sound. Maybe there is a product for me there in 2 years, 3 years, when they've had a chance to sort of like develop, get better. The old guard have filtered out, and there is like new people that at the top. Maybe there is maybe there is a route back that way. But like immediately, I do try and keep in touch. Following the cards, seeing what's on there, reading reviews and things. But I'm not reading stuff that makes me, think, yeah, this is an alternative product for me right now. And you're getting back into the territory of, if you're investing your time in something, we've all got fucking a limited amount of time in our lives. You want to be investing that time in something that you fucking give a shit about and you do find compelling. And, and another big word that should have used previously with AEW is trust. And I think it's trusting that your investment is going to be rewarded. That thing that was a big problem with WWE going back all them years. People who are invested in WWE probably do trust that they're going to be rewarded more now for what they like than they've probably have done for 20 years. I don't trust AEW for a second. I don't trust New Japan for a second. I got interested in Noah a few years ago, but my trust quickly waned with them, sort of thing. You've got to have that element there that it's sort of like a two-way street almost. Like if I'm putting my time into you need to be delivering something that's going to make my time worth that investment, and that's where the likes of New Japan and AEW fail for me.
That's why the Dragon Gate and Stardom fans are the happiest among us, because they're invested in
CMLL, isn't it?
Yeah, that's obviously a bit of a blind spot for us. I mean, we've talked a lot of negative. Like, what are positives right now in the wrestling world? I think I'll go to you first, Matty, because I think I know what yours are.
I mean, do you need to ask me?
As much as everything we've criticised about AEW in the week to week and WWE, depending on the week, they can be positive, they can be negative. What I'm enjoying right now, Matt, I'm enjoying doing the pay-per-view reviews we've been doing. I've enjoyed that, AEW pay-per-views are always going to deliver. That's always a positive you can lean on, because the best wrestlers in the world, regardless of the bad stories that happen before and after, are going to go out there and have great matches in front of hot crowds, and we get one of them a month. The WWE pay-per-views, I just love arguing with you, to be honest, Matty, but I enjoy, watching them at Punk and Drew, which I don't think Gareth has seen yet. We heard that off the air.
You need to watch
the air on Grapple Lads. That might bring him into the WWE fold, very much enjoyed, that. There's a positive, and obviously I'm sure you can talk more for you, Matt.
Oh, mate, obviously, listeners will know, this storyline for me, guys, I want it, much to your chagrin, Ben, I wanted to just carry on, because it is, and in my head, it's going to go on every Mania. I think to myself, well, it's going to end there. And then, this year, when Roman took his hiatus, he built it with the new bloodline. I mean, I don't know, for real, how long it is going to go on. But I'm just going to get to Mania anyway and see where we get. That is, for me, every week. I treat that like I'm watching, as we're saying, but a TV show. That's how I do genuinely see that. I say, my wife's invested now. I get it. I save SmackDown for when she comes home from work now to watch the Bloodline bits. That's what my Saturday consists of, and I couldn't be happier in that regard of watching current WWE. And it is, I've said this before in other shows, it's it is Stockholm Syndrome for years for me. I was there we've talked this in other shows, I was there getting eating what was getting fed to me to a certain degree, for sure. So that's why now when I see something that is, and I invested so much in it, it makes it that extra special for me, and that's why I fucking love it so much, because it's something genuine now. It's fucking hell, this is really, really good. I'm gonna fucking enjoy it while I can, you know what I mean, for sure. And other things, but even AEW, Ben, I know, we have to. There's some wrestlers I like there. It's what we said before,
period. It wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't.
But even last year with JP,
in a row, I was ooh, they're clicking here.
Reference that Moxley, Orange Cassidy. That was genuinely brilliant. And I wasn't a Moxley guy in there. That story they told was so good in the match, and even at the end, he ain't Moxley's respect as he walked out. He was that type of performance. There's some good wrestlers like Kenny Omega when he comes back. I'll always be a Kenny guy. Don't want to say it again, but I'm still one of the very few MJF guys around. I love seeing it because he just causes so much shit, and that's why I love to see him on telly. For that side of it, he just causes so much fucking. But he's just hilarious. So there's these people there I want to see, and Swerve. I'm a big fan of Swerve. Lashley when he comes in, you know what I mean. Enjoy Christian. His heel work still somehow he's still there, isn't he? He's running around with the contract and stuff like that. So there's elements, but it's just the way it gets delivered in AEW, Ben. So, but as I always say,
for all our talk, we might in 3 weeks be like, feeling's back. It's back. Continental Classic back. Kenny's now pushed. He'll be in a tag team money.
Eddie Kingston's a big miss from this Moxley stuff. He would be the Fred hold. If he stood in front of them jobbers on JP's background, they'll all just because of him automatically be enhanced. He's like Suarez 13-14 for us, Gareth. Every player around him was better because of him, and that's what Kingston would do. He'd give it that believability and that aesthetic needed. Genuinely.
As a fellow Red, I'm sure they'll enjoy that comparison.
As long as he's not biting people.
That's one of the best comparisons you can ever receive, Gareth, isn't it?
100%.
Any thoughts on the future or any of that, JP? Like, where are we going next? We asked this on Grapple Lads. Great follow-up, great kind of way to round out the conversation. And we were a bit worse for wear by the end of Grapple Lads when we started past us. So we'll follow up on it. Where is everybody in 4 years? Where's WWE? Where's AEW? Where's, is there an alternative? Is there, I don't think Britt Rezza's coming back. That's that conversation. Is New Japan, can New Japan come back? I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen based on everything we know and have talked about. But any predictions?
I think we will see New Japan start to come back, but it's going to be out of necessity rather than by design. So it'll be a case where you literally have Tanahashi's the first one to drop. I expect Naito to go very soon afterwards. And then after that, it's like, well, really, who do we have? Who can we kind of go with? And I would say their bread and butter has always been built on actual wrestling. So for me, you go with Zack Sabre Jr. as champion for like a year, and you just have him putting on really good wrestling matches with some of the younger guys on the card. And it's not immediately going to draw. It's not immediately going to get everyone involved. But at least it brings back more of what is the New Japan USP that they kind of need. AEW, and that's the point I wanted to raise earlier on, like we obviously hold them to a very different set of standards, because the idea was they were always the company that was going to learn from WWE mistakes. The hope I would have is that they look at what WWE are doing right now in terms of a structural perspective and say, yeah, we need to get this on board. Or they just overall that they have a sort of come to Jesus moment. And could they do it? I'm probably slightly more optimistic on this maybe than yourself and Gareth. Like, I think I don't have faith right now, but could I see a situation where they go, something has to fucking change? What is going on? And they look and they suddenly, this reminds me of the conversation you had with Steph, where you were going through the entire roster and you just had like the world's biggest mid card. And you're like, what the fuck have we got all of these people for? And just that culling down, and it may sound particularly horrible to some people, but you know what it do? It'll give a bit of clarity to the product. And I think we'll all notice it, because like it or not, then they'll be forced to focus on certain people. And if the people they keep are of a certain standard and level, then it'll make you think, oh, okay, these are good wrestlers. So the wrestling will, as I always imagine it will do, it will always hit a certain level on there. They're good enough performers, you'd think, on the mic. And like Matty just mentioned with Eddie Kingston, just sorely missed. And I've always been banging the drum about like sort of unique talents. It's like,
he should have been a world champion by now.
But think of him as a character. He is the kind of character you want this company to be. Yeah, he's a bit rough around the edges, but there's a level of authenticity and heart that you can genuinely get behind. And you can't do that for large swathes of AEW. Or if you do, you see those people so intermittently, they're not the case.
You can't force that with wrestlers, JP. So, it doesn't come across well. It does with him. It's genuine, as you say.
I do think at some point there'll be a word, whether it takes David Zaslav or whoever's in charge of Warner Brothers Discovery to Tony Khan to go, you need to change something. Otherwise, we aren't going to be happy with this. We're not going to pay the same level of money. So maybe that'll be the case. WWE, I think they'll just keep on trucking. There might be a slight softening, but in the main, it's such a well-oiled machine. And I fear, and I say is that the Netflix thing is going to open them up to so many new fans that it's going to be, whether or not, even if they're just, as I like to view them, being like kind of pretty competent to mildly good at best, it's going to work. It's going to work for them because of just the sheer attrition. So I see that's where the future of it is. But certainly AEW and New Japan need to change. And the biggest change is always going to be changing bookers. No Gedo, no Tony Khan. I think that has to be the case. Tony Khan has done his job. He has created a sustainable company worth near $1 billion. Hang your hat up on that and go, that's it. I'm going to oversee this product, but I'm not going to micromanage it. And I'm going to we're going to go with some new, fresh ideas.
How about you, Gareth? Any thoughts for the future as we close this thing out?
I mean, I think the Netflix thing's an interesting one. I think there just seems to be this widespread acceptance. Oh, when WWE's on Netflix, it's going to get even bigger. Like, is it? I think that's a big question mark. Personally, oh, it's in front of more people. Like, most of these people who've got Netflix are just going to start watching WWE, are they? Are they just going to suddenly start eating it up and think, oh, this is great, isn't it? Alongside these great documentaries and TV shows that we've been watching via this channel with better writing. Of course, oh, well done.
I was at a christening yesterday, and I had at least 5 old fans saying, as soon as it goes to Netflix, they're going to start watching it again. At least 5 people who switched off.
As soon as it goes to Netflix, I'm going to start devoting 3 hours of my life to this product on a weekly basis. Like, I think it may happen, but there's big.
That's a lot in one room, Benno.
There's
one of them is holding the baby as well. You get things on your mind, mate. Sorry, guys.
We know how difficult they've found it to change channels to watch SmackDown on a Friday night. Never mind find it on Netflix as well on a streaming platform. So I think there's a lot taken for granted about that Netflix thing and the impact it's going to have on the viewership. From an AEW point of view, it just needs I think it's at just the point where it just needs that radical change, and I think it's. I'm not saying that this is the answer, but if you think when WWE was in the shit, then like at that time, Russo with that younger influence and things like that, that was a marked shift in terms of like the product and the way it was booked and the thinking around it and things like that. I feel like AEW's in a world where it needs that other strong voice who's coming with an alternative opinion that Tony Khan will actually listen to, take his hands off the reins a bit himself, still have like that overriding input into and not give total free rein to. I just think it needs that different strong voice in the room who's taken responsibility for that. And then alongside that, again, you think obviously the role of like a Pat Patterson over the years, like a wrestling person that brings a bit of like logic and continuity and things to the way that things are booked. I think if AEW doesn't get that, I'm not convinced there'll be more than 200,000 people watching the product at the end of this TV deal, because I've got no like Tony Khan's just a guy who's got a rich dad who's trying to write a wrestling program that he's been writing for half a decade and has slowly written it into the ground. Like, what, you could give him another half decade to just keep trying to be TV writer? Like, nah. It's like, it's going one way. It's going one way. All of them. Has he shown any reason to suggest that he's capable of writing a product that's going to turn around this tanker that again JP alluded to before? He hasn't. And then if you think about the best, what was hot about AEW in the first instance was all these characters, wrestling characters that people that had essentially created themselves on the independents, who came together as a collective as AEW. Tony Khan didn't create Kenny Omega, didn't create the Young Bucks, didn't create Orange Cassidy. All of these people who were his core people, they're not Tony Khan creations. They were all people who were created by themselves on the independents, in characters that they developed in other promotions where they had that like creative freedom brought together under his one umbrella. That wasn't a creation of Tony Khan, and he's given me no reason to suggest that this next wave of talent are going to be people that he can then like create storylines or characters. What's his big idea? Hologram?
That's what I mean, Gareth. He's pushed wrestlers. Sorry, but he's pushed wrestlers, but yet creation-wise, I've got to agree with that. I've never thought of it like that, Gareth. Ever.
That's true of WWE too, though, isn't it? That's true of Triple H. That's true of his NXT. I think it's true of most wrestling. I think Tony Khan deserves credit for putting those people in those spots. We can absolutely agree that the handle of them since then has not been ideal. But like, I think we're as strongly. I just think, having lived through Vince McMahon creative in WWE and how bad that was and how they were hemorrhaging viewers for so long, we did find out there was a limit. There's a floor on it. I think that floor is higher than 200,000 for me. If I was going to predict in 4 years, I think they're going to trundle along. Yes, they'll hemorrhage more, but I think it'll hit a certain level, whatever that number is, and that's what it'll be. And I just don't share the concern for the TV deal in 3 years, because I just think, what's TV going to be like in 3 years? What's the landscape? We lived through it with WWE. We went from the network to Peacock to we're going to Netflix now. There'll be something we're not thinking about that'll happen in 3 years. There'll be
might exist now, might it?
Yeah, there might not be USA Network and TBS, but there might be something else that is where it lands and where content is needed. I don't worry about it from that point of view. I worry about it from an investment point of view and my interest point of view, and like I say, just I could absolutely picture it just continuing to be this zombie that exists, that does okay enough that it can justify its existence in the the billionaire Khan families expenditures on it, and I think they will continue to justify that. But I don't think it'll go that low. If anything, for me, I'm more worried about it. It's the mediocrity. It will just continue to be 5, 6 out of 10 mediocre, never drop to that level, but never rise to the heights outside of little windows that we've seen from time to time where it's like, oh, it's been good for 4 or 5 weeks, the power is back, and then it's not. That's kind of where I see AEW. WWE, I think they'll be consistently where they are, maybe a little bit more bullish on the Netflix deal, but yeah, a little bit more maybe glass half full with AEW, despite agreeing with pretty much all of the reasons.
You've got to think of the wrestlers though as well, and if the ratings drop to another 100,000 go and things, and then the next time the contract's around, do I want to be associated with this product? Do I want to be seen to be part of this sinking ship? Am I is it a strain on me, on my earnings? Actually, maybe it is time to chance my arm there, over the road now. But it just takes, I don't know, say if it takes next MJF, Darby Allin and Daniel Garcia next time his contract's up or something, them three, hang about, what if we, go quick, wheel out Edge again or something. No,
money always talks though, Gareth. You'll always have the money. You'll always have that money to give Garcia, to give Swerve, to give them. That leverage is there. Yeah,
shown the work ethic to be bought. A lot of that roster's happy to collect that check. A lot of that roster's happy to take their portion of the 700, 800 million or whatever the TV deal is.
That's the thing. Yeah, it's. I'm just concluding that I'm so fucking glad I'm a Bloodline fan, lads, and I'm happy watching the wrestling I like to watch. Fucking that's what the top of it. Unbelievable the way that is, isn't it? Concept, fucking love it.
It certainly is unbelievable.
There we go. Anything else anyone wants to mention before we go? There's a few news stories we have, but I wonder if they'll stay for the midweek news dump now, JP, unless there's anybody desperately wanted to mention or talk about, or anything we haven't covered.
I think I can hang tight on United Wrestling, I think, for another week, maybe.
I
mean...
You saw the TNA belt there. Come on, that's the...
I did see a TNA. Joe sent you the photo. That was the first thing to send that straight away to Benno. It was... Because it had a little bit... And this is where I put down Brit Rest as a kind of a joke, but he sort of summarised what I often thought of it, which was they're in a venue which would have been probably about 70 people, and it would have been sold out. It was, this. They managed to fit a ring where Joe had his wedding reception, Benno, which was kind of impressive. But then it was literally if you'd never seen Progress and you were watching people do the compare saying, who's been to a United Wrestling show before? Who hasn't? And I looked around at the people, there was a couple of people with us who hadn't been, just say nothing, not getting involved in this. And he went up to this one who hadn't been there as well. And it was almost, I was expecting It's Your Round to come out of it as well. It was some of the wrestling itself, and this is probably the bigger thing, is that the standard of wrestling I still think is always going to be of a good quality, because we've got a certain type of person and athlete who is getting into wrestling. And so they're always doing stuff that's kind of somewhat spectacular. So it's going to get a reaction. But in the main, it feels like this stuff takes, I didn't even know who this bloody audience was meant to be, because there were kids there, but it was stuff that was like, people diving off balconies to do fucking splashes through tables and stuff. And it's just like, Jesus Christ. So it was a bit all over the place, which is kind of what independent wrestling generally is in Britain and all around the world. It's trying to see what happens and people trying to find something that sticks and works, and they're just going to go with it. But is it for me? No, not really. So now one of the other questions about, do you enjoy live shows? And it's like, I enjoy a certain type of live show, but there's not many places that provide it. I probably have most of my fun at live shows is generally going to watch Rev Pro because I like what they do, and it feels like it's a product that's kind of in tune with how I think and feel about wrestling. And
GP,
most of it isn't.
Was Blue Pain over?
No, don't. That was don't. Well, in the end, he just went. He's on a losing streak, so he'd lost as Blue Pain, took off his mask, and then wrestled as Memes. Then lost again. He went, next time I'm coming back as Tom, and I went, I probably won't be here, mate, when that happens. Thank God. As a result of that alone,
that'll be 3 weeks to Foley, is it?
Oh my God! It was, credit to them to try and tell stories and things like that. What was the even weirdest thing is one of mine and Joe's ex-students was part of the ring crew and is training to become a wrestler. And I turned around to Joe and I went, he's going to be next Stone Cold Steve Austin. We'd have taught him doing level 3 media. But there you go. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that Brit Rest is alive and well on the back of that show, but there's a certain audience that are there who are willing to go along, more in irony than anything. That's United Wrestling.
Brilliant. And then from the Retro Bros, obviously we'll have a Retro out probably midweek now this week. Yeah. Patrons can look forward to that. It'll be on the free feed a little while after that, but if you want early access, that'll be coming up. Anything else from you?
Just as I say, Gareth, we left on a cliffhanger. We announced at the time, didn't we, what the show's going to be? So hope everyone follows in for part 2, covering Owen, Gareth, you know what I mean? So it's always proud of them shows, mate. So hopefully everyone will give it a listen and give us any comments, any feedback would be appreciated. But the spreadsheet's going to get updated soon, Gareth. We're making a mega doc, Benno, a joint doc, aren't we, Gareth? With all the matches and stuff.
You'll never update it, Gareth. Don't trust him.
Hey, I started the doc on this stuff, Gareth, didn't I?
I know, and it'll be Gareth's job by next month. That's your future, Gareth.
Gareth loves a good spreadsheet, in fairness.
I was going to say, he started the word doc, I've started the spreadsheet. We're getting into real business now.
Proper stuff. Look forward to it. Brilliant. Well, yeah, there you go. Get that to look forward to. Obviously, Grapple Lads is on the Patreon feed for anybody who hasn't listened to it already. You guys will be up for Halloween Film Club this week. Mm-hmm. The Thing. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to that. That'll drop sometime midweek, I would imagine. And then, me and you, Matty, will be back for weekend show on Thursday as we preview Crown Jewel at the weekends with the Gunther Cody match. We're all so excited for coming off this podcast. And then it should be a Sunday spotlight at the end of the week as well, Matty, as we review that and catch up on everything else. But yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed that. Give us your thoughts. Let us know what you think of the current state of AEW and WWE in the wider wrestling world. But anything else we need to say, JP?
All I've got to say is bye.
Good night, all.
See ya.
See ya.